classes, 47 vehicles, and a chance to sit on top of the very first special event here on the iRacing Esports Network. It is that weekend where before the 24 hours of Daytona, there is, of course, a roar. Here on RaceSpot TV, we have ourselves some fantastic work. We've got Mustangs, we've got Kias, and we've got MX-5s to boot as well. Qualifying currently underway here at Daytona Beach, Florida. It's the Daytona International Speedway, and it's Jake Sperry joined with Justin Prince here in the commentary booth. And Justin, you have to look at this track. It is so iconic for American endurance racing. It is one of what you could call the four crown jewels of 24 hours endurance, but 2 hours and 24 minutes worth of racing. This is going to be a different challenge, mainly because of low-powered vehicles that we have on display today.
Yes, in terms of today's race, we have the mixture of three classes: the Kia Optima, the Ford Mustang FR500S, along with the MX-5 Cup 2016 edition cars. Much more lower speed cars, which means the draft could come into play much more than for today's race, especially for the MX-5s as they work their way around the racetrack today. 2 hours and 24 minutes, no driver swaps, of course, in this kind of race. So it's just about trying to go flat out as far as you can to try and get the victory.
Oh, you have to say so. And a lot of drivers want to put themselves up in the annals of Raw Before 24 history. Got currently the first qualifying laps looking to come in. Let's go on board then with an MX-5 to start. The number 26 of Nils Carstensen for Team Red Sports Online, arguably one of the greatest MX-5 teams out there in the world today. And these MX-5s, they are going to be so dependent on that draft. We've said so already, mainly because they will spend a lot of time when it comes to this race on full throttle around the banking. And if you're anywhere within a second when you hit that banking, you've got just as much chance here today, Justin, of making that overtake on the final lap. You have to look back to 1 year ago at what happened as the first times come in, as we see Nicolas Laubish and Roque Garcia now put their first times. We saw how it went to a 3-wide finish at the line 1 year ago.
Yeah, and those kind of finishes could be very common today. It's just a matter of making sure, first off, you have to make sure in the road course portions you don't make mistakes. And number two, you have to make sure you're still within that second. So it's so important to, in the first couple laps especially of this race, to be having good track position, as well as to not be held up, especially through the bus stop, so you don't lose that draft early on in the race.
That's very, very true. Fabrice Cornelis is currently the fastest man in qualifying in your Kia Optima class. Your Mustang class is the man who won in Mustangs earlier on Sim Speed TV. That's Jim Shedlick. And it is James A. Saunders who currently holds the advantage in the MX-5 category right now. On board with the number 2 machine of Fabrice Cornelis, Pure Racing team, looking now to get a good run here through this banked oval section and that chicane which comes up. He currently holds himself about 600ths an advantage over some of the best Kia Optima drivers in the world. He's got the doctor behind him of David E. Baker, and of course Ross Balfour, of course sim racing as well.
Yeah, and Ross Balfour was actually up at the top of the practice charts for most of the run before the start of today's race. So, of course, as you mentioned, dominant drivers in some of these Kias. And Fabrice actually finished second in last night's race for the Friday edition of the race. So it's going to be a challenge to try and hold on. That race actually was a difference of about 16 seconds, believe it or not. So anything can happen as Fabrice ducks himself into the pits. It looks like he's happy with his qualifying run.
Well, he did cut the chicane through the bus stop, so that would have given him an off-track incident, which would have changed a lot of things. Maxime Bunovic is in second position right now in the number 9 machine in your Mustang category, and he's looking to try and find himself 0.4 of a second on Jim Shedlick. He has only that to find. Of course, you're racing, it's a pure time trial. You get no draft, no help from anybody else. You're hoping that the conditions are favorable to you. Over the line goes Bunovic, and he does himself a time that is 100th of a second exactly slower, unable to find anything more on that second lap. Maybe the tires going away. In your MX-5 category, here's Dries Nice trying to find a little bit more time, and a 2:11.369 is all that can be managed, which is only good enough at the moment for 5th position, as John Allen finds himself at the top of the timing stands right now. 2:11.056. Tony Repisard out of laps then in 2nd position, and it seems like John Allen may just be home and dry as we are under a minute away from taking ourselves to the starting grid. Allen may find himself with a quicker time here, Justin, but it has to be said, he definitely has the MX-5 experience when it comes to the real world.
Yes, of course, we were talking about this before on air, having experience really with the scholarship programs to drive this car in real life with the MX-5, which of course really helps with these kind of races, to have that real world experience, to be able to know where this specific bump is at this track, to have that physical experience, to know how it handles in real life and try and translate that into the sim. I think it makes it a bit easier in terms of trying to record quick times, as we look at Daniel Kraft in one of the Kia Optimas.
He's going to be out of time. Qualifying expires. The grid is as follows. It's Fabrice Cornelis then on the front with David E. Baker alongside. Ross Balfour will start from 3rd with Daniel Kraft in 4th position. It will be Roque Garcia from 5th and Diogo Melro in 6th position. Nicholas Laubish starts 7th with Nicolo Sodrati in 8th position. Paul Jocelyn starts 9th with Antoine Cousin in 10th position. And then you see further down like Corey Davis, Alex Castillo and Tanner McCulloch round out the top 14. In your second category, Jim Shedlick takes the pole position for your Mustangs with Stefan Overgaard alongside him for the Kiva Kinetic team. Maxime Bunovic and William Levesque of Simicube Inex Racing 3rd and 4th. Norbert Leitner and Sander van der Velle in 5th and 6th with Emily Jones. Emery is racing in 7th with PJ Sturgis in 8th, number 1 on his vehicle. It's Dennis Neidhart and Jeff Jacobs rounding out the top 10 with Richard, Guerre, Balassa and Joel Guez, the other 4 drivers there. And in your MX-5s, it's John Allen and Tony Repisard on the front with James A. Saunders and Dory. Travis Schwenke in 4th position, Sven Pluter and Dries Nice on the 3rd row with Anthony Kopek and James Shanks on row 4. David Hampson and Calvin Furident are on row 5 with Niels Carstensen and Loic Barb in the 5th row. We've got Antonin Titus, and Garrett Griffin, and then vehicles who didn't set times: Kevin Ford, Aurelien Gimmelwitz, Adam Shalmassi, Bob Van Katwijk, and Julien Rambeau rounds out 47 for this one today. Rolling start though, but Justin, before we get ourselves onto that rolling start, what are you looking to expect from 2 hours and 24 minutes worth of racing?
I expect to see the drivers try and feel things out for the real race, for the 24-hour race next week, for 1. But for 2, I expect drivers in the first stages of the race to try and set the tempo early, try and get themselves to that front pack, because they cannot afford to lose time or get held up by slower cars, especially in the middle portions of the race. I expect to see a lot of intensity and a lot of passing, especially throughout this race today, to try and pull on away, to try and get as much cushion as drivers can to try and come up on top.
And remember, ladies and gentlemen, we do have more racing action as well available here at this time, because of course the pro qualifying for the new Porsche iRacing Championships will be joined with Will Vincent's gang along with Connery Maddock and Jack Stiles for that one, so make sure you check that one out after the conclusion of this event. But the pace behind Fabrice Cornelis, who has been at this stage before, does like to have a little bit of fun in vehicles like these. David E. Baker, of course, one of the veterans when it comes to the Kia Optima. Ross Balfour has had his fair share of driving along with Daniel Kraft as well. It's going to be a tough race here for those at the front, and in all 3 categories, they've just got to find themselves a bit of pace. In comes the iRacing Roof First safety car. The pace now behind Fabrice Cornelis as the green flag drops, and we get ourselves underway as Cornelis does get a good drop as David Baker moves down to the inside to try and cover off Ross Balfour into the descending turn. But look at this, 3 wide around Balfour, as straight down the inside. Looks Roque Garcia, little bit of contact, but nothing going. Your Mustang category, little bit of contact. That's William Levesque, I think. Gets a little bit of a shove from Norbert Leitner there, and will now drop a horrendous amount backwards, and your MX-5 division gets itself underway as well. Little bit of bumping and banging, but generally a clean start as we get proceedings going, Justin.
Yeah, drivers were 3 wide heading towards that first corner, but for the most part, very clean. The bad thing is with Levesque, he's got some damage on the left front of his Ford Mustang because of that situation. But for these MX-5s that you look at right now, it's important that you don't have drivers too wide like they are for the battle for third spot for too long, because that's how you're able to break the toe and pull off and away as Nice tries to do so and get himself up to third.
Yeah, and Dries Nice does make a very good move there and is one of the best overtakers when it comes to an MX-5. He's just got John Allen and James Saunders to stay with as they start hitting the banking for the first time. Mainly, it's about staying in these groups, and that's what the MX-5 division has done very well with in the opening stages of this event. At the front, though, Cornelis heading himself through the bus stop, and it is a pretty firm train he's got to deal with. It splits up at around Antoine Cousin for Cimatop Esports, as right now you've got Andrew Simmons on the back of this very long and elongated train at the moment, so they will have themselves a very good race. Just worth noting that technical issues for Kevin Ford is going to keep him out of the start of this event, but as they cross the strike for the very first time then for 2 hours and 24 minutes worth of racing, look at how the toe affects Daniel Kraft, getting on the brakes a lot earlier. There is a little concertina effect as they go in, and look at Diogo Melrose snipe down the inside of Ross Balfour, who was left sitting as if he was waiting for a double-decker bus.
Yep, waited for that opportunity and took it with ease, and we see this so much during at least the heading towards the infield section and through the infield section. Just behind them, swapping spots, Nicolas Sabrati able to make the pass on Nicolas Lebesch just now to get up to 7th spot on the track. But we're going to see a bit of that shuffling here and there throughout this race today in that sort of portion of the racetrack. And then try and set single file to set up for either a pass towards the start and finish line, into turn 1, or in towards where turns 4 and 5 are in the infield before heading into NASCAR 1.
2 wide in your Mustang category because Emily Jones, Emery's on the defensive as down the inside. There's a bit of contact there actually, and round will go Sander van der Velde, who was trying to go down the inside. It was a slow maneuver really, and Sander van der Velde, just that slight bit of contact. Jones did leave the room, the Trans-Tasman Racing driver, and just like that bumped off the train, which now includes Mark Reicher, PJ Sturgis and Dennis Neidhart, and that is the battle going on for about 5th position on track. For the front of your Mustang category though, Maxime Bunovic and Jim Shedlick going at it. Maxime Bunovic, one of the drivers who has made a real splash on the back end of 2018. Believe it or not, Justin, he got to 6,000 iRating within 2 weeks.
I find that incredibly unbelievable to believe, actually, but that shows if you can get up there that quick, you got some absolute talent behind the wheel in terms of being able to pick things up quickly, and there's maybe only 2% of the servers that can say they can do that in terms of that. But look at the Kias right now, 2 wide, already battling up for the race lead.
Oh, they are, and that 2 wide for second was Roque Garcia trying to get aggressive around the outside. We'll try Dan Kraft as he tries to pilot a CQR car around and trying to get that position. Can't get it done at the International Horseshoe, so we'll have to wait through this left-hand kink to try and make sure things are sorted. And answer is full of power in that front engine, front-wheel drive Kia, and straight through up into 3rd position. Now Melro under pressure here, as now here comes Nicolo Sadrati trying to find a way through the Italian, and not quite able to make that happen. great racing going on, especially in your MX-5 category as well, as it is an absolute cluster behind the leading three. 3 wide they'll go into turn number 1 twice as they now look to try and shuffle and find some positions. It's as if you can't get any space to breathe here in that top category, because your top 3 at the moment in that one look very, very secure, I would say. Travis Schwenke, James Saunders, and you've also got Dries Nice in that pack as well. And just a little break to James Shanks, and it shows you here, Justin, just how quickly it can change your MX-5s.
Yeah, the draft is the most beneficial out of the 3 classes in the MX-5, where you want to, by the end of the race, want to be that 3rd place driver because of so many opportunities for you to just lose the lead heading out of turn number 4 and heading to the triumphal. Well, heck, thinking back to the Mazda Hot Lap Challenge in the finale for the qualifiers at Daytona here, it was a situation where they're near 3-4 wide, and the winner won the race after being spun into the grass because of how much intensity you have in this. So you at this point, you want to stay at least in the top 4, top 5 of the draft to have a shot by the end of the race to try and cover the win, as James Saunders is going to be passed by a train of drivers on the inside.
Oh, he certainly is, and James Saunders does not have much that he can do about it, because through will go 2 vehicles, Dries Nice and Travis Schwenke, who have battled so many times before in many different Mazda series. A little bit of a wide line there for Dries Nice. That's going to compromise here, and this maybe is the fraction of a breakaway that Schwenke was hoping for. Gets a gap of about half a second, but that will easily be clawed back in by Dries Nice having the tow. You can see it's 2 teammates as Shanks now is trying to bump draft James Saunders through. That's a little bit interesting here. 50-point instant limit as we know, but James Saunders, they're doing NASCAR rules here as they head themselves towards turn 1.
Yeah, how these drivers draft does remind me of sort of like being in, say, the Cup cars, where there's so many opportunities to try, where we see drivers switch positions, have to go back and forth. But it's been amazing how, to me at least, how aggressive a lot of these drivers have been up at the front for these first few laps, because it's not like, say, having just 15 laps. Of course, they got 2 hours and 16 minutes to work with to keep on trading back and forth. And if they can, say, break the toe off from, say, when they're side-by-side like there is right nearly for 2 rows back, that can be the situation where if you're up in the front group, you can have an absolute advantage by the time we get to, say, about the 2-hour even mark.
Yes, but you have to remember...
And we got contact.
Oh, yes, we do, and that's not good here in your MX-5 field as a couple drivers start splintering off and trying to find themselves a little bit of a space, but really they just about keep it together going well. I want to focus on this Kia lead for the moment, because Cornelis has not broken away, and now look at this pack here that stays. Antoine Cousin is probably the bridge between the 2 pack divides, and once the traffic comes into play, once these MX-5s get caught, where they get caught becomes such a huge factor, because there is no way a train of 15 could all fit through at exactly the same time around Daytona.
Yeah, obviously cannot fit all at the same time, but you got to remember, if you got the wrong pace in this kind of a situation, you can try and break away from that said group of 15 drivers. Eventually, you're going to see drivers make mistakes in that portion to lose time. Let's look at the Mustangs meanwhile as well. You see how much they've already broken up their pack. It's down to just a 4-driver lead pack, with the rest of the packs here being 2, 3, or 4 cars on back, with Jim Shetlick leading them on by, with Mr. 6000 IR in 2 weeks on his back bumper.
Yes, and Maxim Bunovic has actually been very clever. He's deciding he doesn't want to go to the race lead here in this event, Justin. He wants to save the fuel and try and go a few laps longer, spend less time on pit road, and ultimately try and win out against Shedlick, Leitner, and Overgaard that way.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to take some time to try and sort this out. I think it's just a matter of if he can just stay in that kind of range and take an advantage. He's in that kind of pace, but Shedlick, you got to remember, was actually the winner of last night's race for the top split race. Came away with the Mustang victory in that race over Casey Kierland. in that race.
Whoa, sorry, we got trouble. It's Dan Kraft who goes straight on at turn number 1. He got turned by Roque Garcia. They were taking two different lines, a bit of contact, and suddenly Dan Kraft is found pointing against the safer barrier. He keeps it going, but just like that, demoted to the back of the pack. It's as quick as that, and Justin, they are just about to hit MX-5s.
And that's probably the worst time to have this situation because, one, you have now the drivers reaching lap traffic. Two, though, you have now Daniel Kraft being so far behind, it's going to be very difficult to reach that group. But for these drivers now, in the super speedway part of the racetrack, it's going to be fairly simple to get around. You take, for these Kias, expect them to try and go on the high side of many of these MX-5s, but during the infield portions, that is where there's going to be chances for some drivers to gain some time back on, say, Fabrice Cornelius up at the front because of how fast he's been going on out of NASCAR 1 and how much he's even breaking away even with the draft effect to think about.
Yeah, 255 kilometers an hour. These vehicles can go as fast, if not faster, than GT3 machines. But look at this at the front of your MX-5 field, because once again, Reposade here just waiting. Dries nice up high side, just trying to stay out of the draft as much as possible. Shanks is helping Saunders here as Travis Schwenke in the Asbury Motorsports car is just going to have to sit in line and play that waiting game. But look at how quickly they are being encroached on by that pack of Kias as Diogo Melro now looks to eye up second position away from Dan Kraft. Into turn number 1 go the MX-5s, and there will be no changes at the front of the field, but let's force it 3 wide, Niels Carstensen, shall we? Bit of contact there, and round's going to go one of them. That's Sven Pluter, who ends up the wrong way, like Sebastian Vettel. More contact involved as well. Now there's going to have to be a case of work your way around it for your leaders in your Kia category, and just like that, pandemonium ensues right in front of your Kia leaders.
Well, you have to say that RSO machine, of course, saw the opportunity, nearly hit the tire barrier, mind you, but just couldn't make the line stick, just pushed up a couple inches, doored the driver in the middle. That, of course, spun down Sven Puta, and then caused the massive pile on the left side of your screen that absolutely destroyed a couple MX-5s. And that was while the Kia Optimas, mind you, were having to deal with the set traffic starting at that point. So that was absolute chaos at the wrong time. If you're the Kia Optima seeing, oh shoot, there's smoke the first time through traffic, what am I going to do? Everyone's thankfully able to avoid them in the Kia Optimas, although they're now mixed up with some X5s right in the midst of the lead pack.
They are, but they have so much top speed that they can just breeze by on the oval section as it's Cornelis, Melro, Baker, and then it's a gap now to Roque Garcia in 4th position. That's what's going to have to be a little bit careful, as now trying to navigate past the leader and actually having to go straight on a little bit was Nicholas Laubish. You'll have to serve a slowdown. Nowhere for Saunders to go, as Saunders had to play that waiting game, almost got given no room to go in that MX-5s, but all of a sudden you can see just how quickly that this race does change. Top 5 now in your MX-5s is pretty much its own little pack as we look back towards the likes, say, of a certain John Allen and his group that he's currently in, and that is with Garrett Griffin. That's 6th and 7th right now, currently just a little bit further ways back. Just having these struggles at the front of the field though. Cornelis has lost the race lead here because Diogo Melro now has to fight this one side by side, takes the position. That was around the outside at turn number 1. New leader for the first time in Kias.
Yeah, and that was in part, I think, set on up because of that set traffic really slowing up Cornelius in the best part of his racetrack so far, which has been the infield. Having to dodge all those MX-5s really held him on up, and now it's the chance for Melro to try and set the tempo and set the pace and try and pull away himself. The question is, how long can he hold on to a lead like this? Is with a driver like that behind him and drivers like David E. Baker, Rocky Garcia, just all being patient off behind them. You see the difference in the turn. This is where usually Cornelius has been able to be stronger, in my opinion, in terms of the exits, but you see the lead driver speeds off and away on the exits out into the NASCAR circuit each time, it seems, today.
It certainly does. See, track conditions today is 29 degrees, partially cloudy, 25 in the air, winds from the southeast at about 6 kilometers an hour, so a relatively cool day at the moment as they head themselves through the infield section once again. And now let's just keep an eye out on the leading battle in your Mustang category. Jim Shedlick still holds the lead. You've got Leitner and Overgaard there, third and fourth, but there has been a change from fifth position, and that's PJ Sturgis making his way past Emily Jones, and she will now have a drafting partner to help push up forward through the field. But the big issue is they are 7/10 a second a lap slower than the guys at the front of the field. So for those four, it's probably, unless there's a big accident there, it's probably going to be those four challenging so far today for the big victory, Justin.
Yeah, right now they're in the perfect strategy. We're able to pull away just on the raw pace, and they might go off to a 3-driver pack because Stefan Overgaard really overcooked the turn coming onto the back of the racetrack. And now he is you can see 4, 5, 6 car lengths and dropping back to Norbert Leitner at the back of that train from that bad exit. So they're in the perfect spot right now. It's just a matter of, can they keep up, though, with Jim Shedlick as well as Max and Benovich today as this race goes on and develops with the raw pace that both of them have in much of this track.
But this is where the draft comes into play here, Justin, because you saw how you look at Bunovic and Leitner, they certainly have the pace to go out there and make moves, but for Stefan Overgaard, who dropped back those 6 car lengths, he can just claw that back as they start going, after you, sir, no, after you, I don't quite want to make moves, as now Leitner starts thinking about going to the high side, trying to maybe think about getting past Bunovic, and will look to try and secure that position. Overgaard is able to close that gap in. You can see again, lifting out of the move there into one, is actually going very deep on the brakes there was Bunovic, trying to slow it up, and just about was able to, but once again, pack of 4 resumes your Mustangs.
Yeah, that was part draft, part trying to brake late, knowing that if you try and brake too early, if you have to brake too early, he ends up falling off on back and potentially once they get out of the infield. But Leitner, I think, is not being patient at this point. He sees his opportunity to try and get by Benovich right now. It's just a matter of, can he actually get the move done if he decides to? Because if they take too long, that's where Shedlick gains some time back, loses some again with the draft, of course. But there's the chance if they battle for, say, 2-3 laps, you can break the toe and try and pull off and away.
Very, very true. We've had a massive change, though, in your MX-5 field because James A. Saunders is a mile away from where he needs to. He was involved in an incident last lap at the International Horseshoe, and it was with Travis Schwenke, and ultimately lost out with a big incident and is all the way back now with Aurelian Gimmelwitz and Anthony Kopech. So now it's a change at the front of the field. It's now Travis Schwenke leading your MX-5's Nils Carstensen in second, and Garrett Griffin now in third, John Allen in fourth position. That's just how quickly that this one changes here in the MX-5s. So you've got to keep your head on a swivel here when you look at these MX-5s. They change around so quickly for a vehicle that does not much. Schwenke does run a little bit wide there through turn number 2. This will allow Carstensen the chance to come back in.
Yeah, this is a perfect chance for this opportunity for Carstensen to have a chance to battle for the spot. And as you said, they keep on trading back and forth. That's to be expected with these MX-5s. The question is, eventually somebody's going to be able to settle on in. But look who's at the back of the train just all of a sudden. John Allen is at the back of the train after setting his best time of the race, a 2:10.721. to be able to get back up towards that lead group, I think in part because of some of the traffic that these drivers have had to deal with too, because he was able to draft with the group he was working with before and then get enough luck in raw pace to catch on back up to the lead pace, I believe.
And look at the battle for the lead, because now fourth position, that's Nicolo Sodrati. He's going to go around the outside of David Baker, and he's probably going to try and run the gauntlet here, because around Cornelis he'll go. He'll try and get 3 as they get on the brakes into turn number 1. Almost contact between them. Sodrati was trying to push a little bit too hard. Still has the line, though, to try and push, but Melrose runs him out of road. And just like that, the gauntlet was almost complete. Nicolo Sodrati pushing the absolute limits here in your MX-5 field. And look at the second pack of, the Kia field. Look at the second pack of the Kia field. Here's Tanner McCulloch trying to go around the outside of Andrew Simmons.
Yeah, you're looking at that right now, and he's just getting pushed right off the racing line off the high part of the apex and losing that spot right there from McCulloch. But you have to say, though, with them, that's the thing is that lead group of Kias, if we can go back to them, they're going to have to deal with Peter Belisa, pardon me, as you see in the Mustang, because he got shoved off the track at that same time as that battle for the race lead for these Kias. So they're going to have him now possibly used as a pick to try and secure the spot for now, but up at the front by Cedretti.
That's very true, and Cedretti now has taken the lead from Diogo Melro, did that one in the infield section. It is a train of 7 at the front of your Kia field, and they will have a few more they've got to deal with. Leitner has dropped completely off of the pack with Levesque now, and Van der Velde he is with. So now the pack at the front of the field is now a 2-car scrap for the lead, and that's all of a sudden where Maxim Bunovic is going to try and go to the outside to try and make the move, but he breaks earlier than Jim Shedvick, who retains the race lead. And that was a big break, actually, from Bunovic. He drops a few car lengths from that. Overgaard now in third, so it makes me feel that Overgaard had the incident then in the long term. But back to your field up front here, and I believe you've been keeping an eye on this one here, Justin, because look at Diogo try and make the move back.
Yes, again, trying to be hungry to try and make this pass. Yes, and he's been trying to do so more and more aggressively each time. It's just cannot get that line. He's got one more chance before the NASCAR portion of the track. The question is, can he get the perfect line? You can see he's trying to change it up, take a high entry line, try and dime it off of the apex to get the low exit, and that gets him into the passing opportunity. But the thing is, that higher line, if you can plant the power down quick enough without losing traction on the back tires, he can just pull back out to single file just like that. But look again, it's time for them to deal with the Mustang traffic in just a moment.
Yeah, it certainly is, but these Kia Optimas, they're effectively iRacing's version of a touring car at this stage. They are very much about power, door-to-door battling, and a little bit of a bump and a bang here and there. So sometimes when these sorts of vehicles don't have the grip to go through the corners, someone like Melro may back out to try and keep going. High side this time, traffic goes of Julien Guerre, and that will give the racing line to all the Kia Optimas who decide to make a way through. Joel Guez will be the next Mustang to try and get by. So this is going to be a little bit of a case of where do you dare, and the answer is neither of them do into the chicane. And actually Melro gets a big tank slapper trying to get in onto the corner. That does drop him 3 or 4 car lengths there, just trying to put that power down. This could be a breakaway for Cedretti if he is not too careful, but for the time being at least, Cedretti does get just a little hint of a breakaway, and that will keep him safe for another couple of laps.
It will for now, and I think that's what he wanted to happen with that traffic. But you may be wondering, wasn't that Mustang group that you were talking about, of course, a 4-driver group just a few minutes ago? Well, looking back, what happened was with Mark Rennert, and what broke things up, we go back to lap 10, turn 1. You see about here, it was starting to break up to about a 2-driver pack, but the draft could try and close that back up. But Rennert, he is right now the front driver, loses the back traction on the corner exit. That holds up Overgaard. Rennert loses a lot of time spinning the car out, and that is why all of a sudden it's now just a 2-driver race lead for the Mustangs between Shedlick and Bunovic because of that spin. Again, the state can quickly break it up, Jake.
It certainly can do, and they are now trying to consolidate that position so they can only fight amongst themselves, and that is very, very telling as now the Kias do make their way through the mid-pack right now. Already Melro has found his way straight back onto the rear of Cedretti and gives him a bump, saying, hurry up through the corner, son. And like that, Diogo Melro, the Portuguese driver, is trying to push on forward and looking to try and keep on this attack. And this is about these two now trying to work together to break everybody else, to break Cornelis, to break Baker, to break the likes of, say, Ross Balfour and Roque Garcia. These Kias will have to pit a lot more than the other vehicles here in this event, and that's going to be telling as well, because it means that they've got a lot more strategy to work with than a lot of other categories are going to have today here, Justin.
Yeah, looking at some of the estimated laps alone for some of these drivers, say for the Mustangs, it's 59 laps. For these Kias, it's at least 63 laps that they have to make. That's an extra 4 laps, which you got to count. Plus, on top of that, the fuel you have to, of course, account for. So the question is, when do they decide to pit? We're already 28 minutes into this race, just past the 2-hour mark, I should say, for these drivers for the fuel run. So it's going to be, when can you come in? When can you do so? And when you do, can you make sure you do so cleanly, as Melrose tries to dive it in and nearly loses the car, sending it hard on the late brakes in the middle of the apex?
Well, that was brave, right in front of a couple of Mustangs of Jones and Sturgios, who will both get out of the way then for the leaders, and it's about how you do it. Look at how Sturgios is able to navigate and manage the traffic around him better than Emily Jones is able to. This is allowing the breakaway for Sturgios, because Jones is having to back off of this a lot more than Sturgios has to. Sturgios is running his own lines, and I think Emily Jones is now going to fall back off of PJ Sturgios if she is not careful. And just like that, Strati, Melrose, Cornelis, got Baker, Garcia, Balfour and Laubish all in this train. They all find themselves now with an opportunity to break away, but Sturgios proving a little bit of a thorn in the infield section, because Cornelis was struggling to get around. They are very even, the Mustang and the Kia, when it comes to that infield section. Maybe only a difference of about half a second to a second.
Yeah, and you've seen that, some of that speed between the two, especially when Fabrice was in front of the traffic, as now they have to go 3 wide, mind you, with some of the MX-5s. But to get back to that point, like, it makes it so difficult to try and navigate that traffic in. What has actually hurt Emily, as you talked about, a little bit because of that said traffic, how much time was lost to PJ Sturgios, about 8 car lengths, just barely in the traffic and having to dodge an MX-5 now.
Yeah, they are, and they're going to go straight down the middle to try and get this. This is great traffic management from everybody involved who gets around, and that was well played, as now all your leading categories are going to merge on each other. Garrett Griffin leads, through will go Bunovic and also a certain Jim Shedlick. And right now, as James Shanks has had a spin just in the background, there tries around the outside, Bunovic goes a little bit deep, and there's your leaders with Melra and Sadrati now trying to find themselves in on these other leading packs as well. It's pretty much chock-a-block, and this is what the racing action gets to. You just find yourself in a little bit of a pack, you try and get yourself a bit of space, you try and find a way to get going, as we were looking at the James Shanks spin that just happened, and that was one.
And Travis Schwenke just got...
And there is Schwenke, yes, you're right.
He just got punted off the racetrack, mind you, I believe by just the race leader for the Kia Optimas just now. So he has now lost the race lead because he got ran over on the corner exit. Look at the replay here. This happened just at that moment where you see in the back, you have the race leader for the Kias, thinks he ends up having to move him out of the way, expecting him to go to the right with the traffic. And now Travis Schwenke with severe damage on the back end and getting spun out of real action just now, if we can keep this going.
Yeah, he's had another one again. This was just coming out onto the oval, and that was with Nicholas Laubish, of all people. So Laubish now will start dropping backwards. So really a horrible lap for Travis Schwenke, and I don't think it was his fault, the first incident, because he was stuck on there on the outside, and I think Sadrati just got a little bit of the grass, had nowhere to move, and in the end just ran out of road and hit Schwenke. But it's that second incident that we keep going, as we get a replay also of what happened to Shanks as well, as that was a shame for him, and that is day done in terms of that one. But right now you have to say Travis Schwenke, the big loser in your MX-5 field, which now all of a sudden looks a lot different to what it did just a lap ago.
Yeah, for one of the top drivers in the MX-5 World Tour, all of a sudden, going from the lead to ninth is an absolute disaster, I think, for him. And on top of that, multiple hits to the car. So that is going to be very difficult to be able to try and recover after all those incidents. But let's go up towards the front, because, again, you see Sadrati still having to hold off Melrose. It's been still very difficult. But through all that traffic, they've been able to break away just a little bit from Maurice Cornelius. Just that extra little bit for the infield section.
Yes, and well, they are trying to break away Cornelis, but at the moment Cornelis is doing just about enough to keep himself in. About half a second back he finds himself, so This race certainly not over by any stretch of the imagination. We're only about half an hour through these 2 hours and 24 minutes worth of racing that we'll be looking at as we turn back to Tony Repisard, who has found himself a long way back. He's 9 laps down as things stand, and I believe he was trying to get back out and going again.
That's why I was trying to bring that up, because he was trying to drive back on the track sideways, mind you. Pardon me. Because usually you won't note that back, but usually you have to give his commitment. He tried to get back on the track after the required repairs sideways with only 2 functioning tires. Got to give it to him after that first lap incident, that 3-wide incident, to try and get as far as he can. Unfortunately, can't get back on the racetrack, obviously, when you drive like that.
It seems that the mandatory repairs have been done, but he needs a lot of optional repairs to be done as well to get the vehicle back in working condition. So for that, it seems that Tony Repisard's race is all but over in the long term in this one. It's a big change, though, in your MX-5 field. It's now Garrett Griffin and also Niels Carstensen at the front, and it's a long gap back to John Allen now in 3rd position. A good 3 seconds or so has to be the worry, so we'll keep that in mind as this racing continues at the moment. So we've got ourselves some very, very good racing, but Jim Shedlick all of a sudden finds himself a little bit of a gap here to Maxime Bunovic, who really has not had the run of the draw, and it has come to the traffic right now here, Justin, because all of a sudden Bunovic finds himself almost a second, if not more, back.
Yeah, and again, that comes down to the traffic as you're looking at Bunovic again, and just too much traffic. When you get into too much traffic, especially when you're reaching towards the bus stop portion, I think, that is where you can lose so much time, because you have to get out of the racing line, have to get out of the gas earlier, and of course brake earlier to give space to the faster classes, and that's what hurts a lot of drivers and breaks things up and can be the absolute difference. As you look at the biggest movers and comers and goers of the race today, that has hurt a lot of drivers and in the end can cause mistakes. And now it's just about trying to recover that time as much as he can, while Shedlick has to let by said traffic like he did with Van Katwijk, as you've seen up on the front of the road just now.
And Jim Shedlick all of a sudden has Maxime Bunovic on the rear. Overgaard now in 3rd position, all on his own, but having a good race of things at the moment. Keep an eye, though, on your Kias, because the top 6 still remain within a second and a half of each other. Greg battling a little bit further down as Antoine Cousin and Corey Davis look to battle it out for 8th and 9th position on the road, but Corey Davis will decide to think better of it then in through the infield section of the oval. Here, this bus stop chicane, as now Alex Castillo gets on the rear as well and tries to get involved, but now this is where the patience game starts to come in this race here, Justin, because we've had that big blowout start to the event. Now you settle down, you work out who your rivals are, you pick them off one at a time, and you run time down to get going, as once more Diogo Melro stays very, very tight behind Sidrati and just leans out of it on the throttle, trying to maybe lift and coast a little bit more fuel.
Yeah, this is the perfect chance now, as you said. Once you do that, if you have the possibility, you can save fuel by getting off the gas, I should say, on the corner entries. He's let the car roll more, not go maybe full throttle in some cases, and let the draft carry you, keep you even, get it steady that way. Because the lead driver, in theory, of course, with the draft, will burn more fuel compared to the driver behind. So he's, I think, maybe thinking of that kind of a strategy right now. While he wants to probably make the pass and has been getting close to the back bumper, he knows he doesn't have to do it right now because it'll help him in the long run to try and maybe get an extra lap or 2 out of the field.
Three-car scrap going on then in your Mustang category. You've got Norbert Leitner on the rear, Dennis Neidhart down the inside, a little bit brave, and this will allow Mark Reicher to make a move back and up and under, and just like that, for the last couple of corners, Dennis Neidhart has been getting a little bit too aggressive at the moment. You know, this isn't the case of you're trying to get going. This isn't a heart attack. This is now trying to get through and just hold on and just make some nice, easy overtakes. You're in a pack of 3 as well here as you look at things. So that's going to be just a case for Dennis Neidhart. But just try and calm things down and try and make a more decisive overtake instead of going at every corner.
Yeah, and it doesn't help either when the driver in front of you is actually locking up the brakes, bringing up puffs of smoke like Reinhardt just did there. But for Neidhart, pardon me, he, I think at this point again, save some fuel, try and get maybe a run, and know that there's an opportunity and see if anyone was going to work with you. It looks like Norbert Leitner might think about that if need be, as he went to the outside line that time. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see maybe Leitner and Nordhart try and get around Reinhardt. Looks like trouble.
It looks like trouble. There was a bit of contact between your Kia leaders there, between Cedrati and Diogo Melro in through turn number 1. It's a lot more forcive of a brake from Cedrati, and a bit of a touch there front to rear as Melro tried to turn in for a corner which Cedrati was still there for. Cedrati is clearly the slowest driver of this pack and is starting to hold up here, and I think everyone's just happy to run like Daniel Ricciardo did at the Monaco Grand Prix. Okay, we're stuck at this same pace, so we'll just try and run that pace and run our strategies accordingly to it. Diogo Melro, I think, is getting a little bit frustrated now in the Team Mad car, and it might be a bit of mad by name, mad by nature in a moment if he's not too careful.
I was going to say, while saving fuel, of course, on that last lap, making that point, he was also getting towards the back bumper each time, just about nearly giving him a tap, in fact. Cedrati also has some damage on the right front that's also going to affect his speed for the rest of this race potentially. So that might be also affecting the time. So I think Melro just needs to pick his right spots. He's got the pace. It's just a matter of getting the right spot to make the pass. He can't just wedge it in, because if he does that, that's going to cause trouble. He's just not been able to make a pass for the lead, really, make the pass for the lead, I should say, quite yet, and get that run he needs to, especially in the NASCAR, heading into turn 1, I should say.
And what's telling is now Nicholas Laubish is back on the rear. He did a 54 flat that last time by. Compare it to the leader, who did a 54.9. So that's 9/10 of a second quicker, and that's a little bit concerning here, because that second pack will try and chase Kusan side by side with Alex Castillo. Look at this, trying to find a way to the apron was Andrew Simmons, who has nowhere to go in this one. He's now got to scrap it out with Corey Davis. Right now we've got two very heavy packs, which contains all of your Kia battling at the moment, and this one is only looking to get more and more aggressive the closer we get to the pit stop window.
And I think you have to keep an eye on that second pack now, because they're actually running faster overall because of Cedrati out for the front of that lead pack. Last time by, they ran 4/10 faster than the top drivers in the first group. And they got more drivers there too, so they got themselves numbers and lesser amount of drivers damaged as well. So while they've been trading along spots here and there for the lead driver, they've been using that, I think, to slingshot each other up a little bit to catch on back up and try and give them a shot for the race lead. If they keep at this pace, they might reach them in the next few minutes, within maybe 10 minutes, if they keep on having Cedrati leading that lead group. If Melro makes the pass, that could change.
The top 14 in your Kia category are split by 7.2 seconds. That tells you that the top 14 are half a second split between each other net on the road. That's really, really nice to see just how aggressive that this field can be and how close-knit the battling is, as Melro once again gets a very nice run coming through that section, as everyone, of course, is still trying to save that fuel, so probably lowering down the pace of this event, just trying to hit numbers and trying to save laps as much as possible. MX-5s, though, Garrett Griffin has been caught by Nils Carstensen, so it's a two-car scrap for the lead, but all of a sudden, look who's now back into fourth position. It's Travis Schwenke, and Schwenke has got the bit between his teeth, because he is trying everything now to muster that next pack back to John Allen.
And if anyone can do that on raw pace alone, it would be Schwenke. I've seen him. Schwenke was very competitive here before during the Mazda Hop-Up Challenge. He's competitive in the Mazda MX-5 World Tour. Or he can do it. It's just a matter of if he can continue to work a little bit with some of the drivers around him. Antonin Titus and London behind them, David Hampson. But I think he's got still the faster pace. It's just, can he catch up to drivers like John Allen, who is starting to lose the draft, and say work with John Allen potentially? Because now that could come into play if he can get someone safe that falls off the pack. He can gain time, still 6 seconds to gaining about on average a tenth a lap when there isn't lap traffic to come into play, which ended up breaking up that gap for John Allen to the rest of the top three.
And what's telling about that MX-5 Cup car is that how long it can go on a tank of fuel. It can go anywhere upwards of 90 minutes. There's only one stop, really, that these MX-5s have the capability of doing. So if you get any chance to save fuel, you could save maybe 2-3 laps around this track. And it is very telling how much the laps do add up in these MX-5, so keep an eye on that the longer that this race goes for who decides that they want to stop first in this event. Still though, your Kia leaders are now actually starting to have a bit of a breakaway here. Cornelis really did not have the best of bus stops, stuck in traffic. That traffic, of course, really was not the helpful thing that he wanted, and now that gap up over probably a second and a half. That was Adam Shalmazi who he was struggling to get by, and just like that, look at this. Here starts to come the attacks, and here comes to start the aggressiveness, because there is Baker, there is Roque Garcia, and there is the gap, and there is probably technical issues that have just hit at probably just the wrong time. Sadrati has lost a lot of time. Sadrati, I think, has decided to come down onto pit road,
Yeah, and we got pit stops as well as a car in the grass. Antoine Cousin is having to cut into the pits after blowing his pit stop for a late decision and getting flipped under upside down, mind you. That's why he's pulling in without a hood. So some of the lead cars are now starting to come in. And this is where, if you make a mistake on the pit entry, like say in stock car racing at this track for the Daytona 500, it can absolutely ruin your day. Let's look at the replay with that. We'll start off through NASCAR 3 and 4. Antoine Cousin was that lead driver of the second group for much of the way. A pass was starting to be made. Then I think he realized he couldn't make it on fuel for the next lap, so he tried to duck in late, got ran over from behind. That flipped him upside down 2, 3, 4 times into the grass. Still was able to keep the car going at least to get into his pit stall as it goes over to double-digit barrel rolls. But that's where you have to know when you're going to pit, know you're going to make enough fuel for the lap, and tell people behind you, or else that will happen and ruin your race.
You have to have a specific strategy, something that did not work as Nicolo Sadrati. It's a long stop. It takes about a couple of minutes, because when it comes to these fueling, it's not a straight nozzle. You have to use fueling jugs. So if you fuel up using 2 jugs, you have to wait, you have to change the jug, get a new jug on when it comes to these Kias, and that's why pit stops take a very long time. Diogo Melro officially caught now by Fabrice Cornelis, and who decides they want to dive down in on the lane? Answer, nobody then in your Kia field deciding now is the time to make that stop, as Melro now holds just a 0.2 of a second advantage. They pass the MX-5 leaders, runs a little bit wide, allows Cornelis the chance to come back in along with the rest of the train. This now becomes a very, very dangerous little game, as now the second group decides they all want to dive in and make that stop.
Yeah, you see all of them had been trying to save a bit of fuel, working together and trading that lead car. Daniel Kraft is the furthest pit stall out of them. But to get back to where you have drivers, of course, such as the current leader in Melro, running behind that, of course, running behind the lead car in that group in Sadrati was that much helpful to save the fuel, to the point where it's going to be about a potentially up to 2-3 lap difference if you played this out right behind him. And for the rest of these drivers, that is where, if you know you have a faster car, you can save some fuel and gain that time via the pit delta and on the track itself as the race goes on. If you can stretch that extra couple laps, these drivers estimated 53 laps of fuel to go, 53 laps to go, I should say, in this next hour and 40 minutes.
It's very firmly a 3-stop race then for these Kia Optimas, and they understand that, and they will try and make their stops as efficiently as possible. Small little gap gaining then for Diogo Melro, but everyone in this train has a chance of winning. Cornelis, Baker, Garcia, Balfour, Laubish, all there, all with an opportunity to showcase that they can be the best Kia Optima driver probably of 2019 as Mello angles onto pit road, as does Roque Garcia and Nicolas Laubish. Split strategy time. Look how much more aggressive Nicolas Laubish is on the line. He's been practicing his pit stop entries because he was absolutely flawless on it. Now all of a sudden it's Cornelis who leads, Baker second, Balfour third, and they've gone the longest.
Yeah, there's still a couple other Kias out there too, Baker and Cornelius, as you mentioned.
Oh, Laubish missed his box.
And that could lose Laubish some time here, because these pit stops, at least in the alone in the pit lane, 2 minutes in the stalls, and as up to as high as a minute and 51 seconds when trying to get fuel. You cannot afford to lose any sort of amount of time. Having to go in that box and miss that time could lose them 1 second of the track, which could potentially lose them the draft.
That's very, very telling. And all of a sudden, with Fabrice Cornelis unleashed at the front of the field, how quick will he be able to go on those fast degrading front tyres, try and get the lap that he wants? Because on the fresh rubber, every single time, Nicolo Cedrati will just keep gaining and gaining and gaining on what he is going to be able to do. He is the big benchmark that you need to look at in terms of this field, because he was the first driver to come down of these Kias, make that opening stop. Keep an eye out then on where he is, and that's currently on the oval section at this stage. Currently 14th position behind Paul Jocelyn, who has yet to come down in and make his stop. So this is going to be a little tough one for those in the stops, still trying to get fuel, maybe even fresh tyres here, Justin. And this is what you have to worry about, as soon Cornelis, Baker and Balfour will be thinking, when's it time for the stop?
I wouldn't be surprised if we see it either here or the next lap. Baker, it looks like, might be the one coming in. Yes, in fact, he is with Balfour. And I'm surprised Cornelis has been able to stretch this as long as he can. I think that might explain why he was losing some time in the infield section here and there. He was trying to save big time to try and get the biggest tire advantage, I think, out of everybody, especially on these two drivers, knowing that it's not going to be just about how I do in the draft. It could come down to, do I have the best strategy and the best tires potentially for the end of the race today?
Look at how the tyres have helped Nicolo Cedrati miles away from Diogo Mero, Nicolas Laubish and Roque Garcia to boot. So right now, Nicolo Cedrati has got himself probably about a 2-3 second advantage that he can actively use here in this event. And that was a very, very good stop by him to gain that gap. Now you worry about drivers like Fabrice Cornelis and how long they're going to go into stop. Been held up for a long time, 55-1 the last time by for the Pure Racing Team man, and I think Cornelis is in all sorts of trouble now and could easily fall behind Baker, Balfour and everybody else when it comes into this pack. I think the undercut was the right strategy here when it came to the opening stop.
Now that I think about it, I think I agree with you at this point, because I'm looking at the times that you were talking about. 9-second difference between drivers on older tires after they're coming to in their first lap and the drivers on fresher tires, it seems here. So that is a, pardon me if I'm reading this right here, it's at least right now 9-second difference between the drivers that you see on your screen and those drivers right now. So that is a huge amount of time that's hard to gain, I think, on the track itself, and could end up becoming where, when they have to come down for the second time, really decide who's going to potentially come away with this race win, as it looks like Cornelis going to duck into the pits finally after having it looks like a 4 or 5 lap fuel advantage on his competitors today.
Yes, and that's going to mean he's going to have a very short final stop, and we've got to keep an eye out on those final stops here in this race, because through will go Paul Jocelyn. That will soon be very quickly followed by Nicolo Cedrati, who has managed to get that gap, unless, if I look at Paul Jocelyn's laps, he's made the very, very early stop. And actually, I reckon he has. I reckon that Paul Jocelyn leads this event now outright, along with Bob van Katwijk, who I believe is a long way back, because they've had short stops, used that short stop early to to get back out and ahead once again. So Jocelyn leads, Sadrati in second, Melro, Laubish, Garcia. Baker and Balfour fall out into the middle of nowhere. It was a 1 minute 38 stop for Jocelyn, which was a little bit shorter than everybody else, trying to gain track position. These Kias certainly do change on a dime, and now Cornelis could drop back even as far as probably about 7th or 8th position if he's not careful here.
Yeah, not only that, Van Catwick took a 1:15 pit stop, believe it or not. So he's even farther ahead of where Jocelyn is on the track, and could potentially be right where Cornelis is by the time he gets out of the pits. 1:34 overall. That is the shortest pit stop out of everybody in the field for the Kia Optima. So that I'm curious to see how this strategy is going to play out for that with that short of a pit stop as the clouds settle in and cools down the racetrack.
And of course that means that oversteer is a bigger factor when the clouds come in. Look at your MX-5 battle though for the lead. It's now a 3-car train, because joining Carstensen and John Allen is all of a sudden, and Garrett Griffin is John Allen. So now it's a 3-car train at the front. Antonin Titus now trying to pull this one back. Bob Van Katwijk officially leads this event here. Then in the roar before the 24, as we hit ourselves in-game time at just past 10 past 4. We're looking at very, very soon. Fabrice Cornelis at the moment waiting. Through goes Jocelyn, through goes Sadrati, through will now go Laubish and Melro and Roque Garcia, who he was fighting with. Through goes Baker, through goes Balfour. All of a sudden, Corey Davis and Tanner McCulloch may have a shot of trying to get in. Not if Corey Davis makes corners like that. Here comes Tanner McCulloch trying to find a way through. No chance for him, but Fabrice Cornelis now firmly back of the train for him.
That's going to be a lot of time to try and make up at this point. I think at this point, it's hoping that he has the right amount of fuel strategy. But the thing is, the way these strategies have worked out, so with the roll before the 24, if you get on the biggest one where you're able to get enough of an advantage, that could be enough to win the race. And for your race leader, it is a heck of an advantage right now, to say the least, on the racetrack for him. 23 seconds, give or take, it is right now for the race lead back to Jocelyn. Then you have Sandretti, who is 26 seconds back. So the question is, how is this going to work? Because in theory, that would mean an earlier pit stop on this for the second stop of the race, as you look back at where Sandretti is on the track, entering the backstretch right now.
Yeah, Nicolo Sadrati now has to just get the bit between his teeth, because he's got the gap to Nicholas Laubish, who now has got past Diogo Melro and is really pushing this train forward. He did a 53.9 on his chases down. In fact, his fastest lap was a 53.2 on lap number 4 of this event. So Laubish certainly does love this vehicle, did very well when it came to the Kia in the 24 hours of the Nürburgring as well. So that will be a good chase. We are still, of course, waiting for the other 2 categories to come down and make stops. Those being your Mustang category and, of course, your MX-5 category. Same leading 2 at the front of your Mustangs as it has been all event. Jim Shedlick and Maxim Bunovic have been having their own little scrap. Stefan Overgaard has been waiting in the wings in 3rd position. And then you've got Sturgios and Jones, who are 5th and 4th respectively. But that pack of Jones and Sturgios now here, Justin, is being caught by Reichert, Neidhart and Leitner, who are all within about 3 seconds of this pack. Leitner, of course, formerly on the front of the train.
As expected, they passed Reichert and left, is trying to leave him in the dust, and now working together as they signaled about 20 minutes ago. So it's now they're trying to work together. You see their times, 2:02 flat. The best time for Nurchard in the race last time, 2:03 last time on the racetrack. But it's still going to take a lot of work to try and have any chance to catch up to those front drivers, and take some maybe strategy, saving it, maybe that extra lap, trying to hope that they get the fresher tires to have any sort of chance to catch these guys, as the lead group is now being broken up by a whole train of MX-5s.
Oh, they have done, and now Jim Shedlick will try and break away as they pass the 4th position train headed by Travis Schwenke, who will now be overtaken again by Antonin Titus as he makes his way through. So it's all starting to get a little bit antsy then, as John Allen takes the lead in your MX-5 category away from Garrett Griffin. But let's focus on these leading 2 in your Mustangs. Let's go on board with the number 9 machine of Maxime Bunovich as he chases down Shedlick. This is Racebot TV, fan immersion. Will change in your Mustang field because Stefan Overgaard has decided it is time to hit the lane and is the first of the Mustangs to really make a decisive move onto pit road. That's something we've been keeping an eye out on. Also a big move at the moment. Laubish just did a 53.6, has been dragging the train back to Nicolo Sodrati, only able to do 54.4s. Right now you have to say here, Justin, this race is starting to spice back up again here as we are just after the majority of the first stops here in the Kias.
Yeah, this is absolutely getting towards that point. This is where a lot of drivers want to make up some time during the early portions of the run to try and gain up. You see 0.8 of a second gain the last time, about that average a lap on those drivers that have changed up strategy. Jocelyn and Sandretti having that smaller group, already closing on up to them. Look how close they're starting to get. They're already towards the straightaway and having a Dodge MX-5 these drivers up on your screen as well on top of that, and still picking up time. Jocelyn now still left on his very lonesome for the time being with all of this going on with them all drafting together. When you have two drivers, it's of course faster than having just yours running your very lonesome, where it also messes up your fuel strategy.
That's very true, and that's been the case. It's been about picking off drivers one by one. That's what Laubish has done, completely breaking Diogo Melro over the course of the last couple of laps, and now Sodrati has to be very careful about this because it is clear Laubish has pace, but decides to back out of it in towards turn 1 and 2. Issues in front though, because very wide was John Allen through the opening corner. He was almost redesigning his whole circuit due to the vehicle of Jocelyn making her way down the inside. So now they're going to thread the needle through the traffic, and that's going to be a little bit difficult. That's going to close things up potentially, but just like that, Diogo Mero now able to put that power down and get back within draft range.
Yeah, that was a scary situation when looking back at what Jocelyn tried to do. It had dive bombed it in on all the MX-5 and scared them all the way, but that's going to play, I think, in the hands of drivers like Schlenke who are still trying to gain time and now working with the driver of Kalen and Fernard in all of this. Let's look at that dive bomb that caused that overrun for John Allen. Jocelyn comes in, dives it in hard. Allen has to hit the brakes hard because the driver in front ends up having to hit the brakes early and nearly slams the back door and redesigns the back bumper of the driver up in front. That driver is Garrett Griffin, and able to still keep it stabilized, thankfully, and keep the cars not destroyed, which, of course, is not a way to finish a race.
And of course, when it comes to the build of these vehicles, the MX-5 probably against the two bigger and muscly cars of the Korean Kia and, of course, the American Ford, it means that the Japanese MX-5 does normally take the brunt of most accidents in these sorts of races, so they have to be very, very careful about how they manage themselves when it comes to incidents, as now surely Nicolo Sodrati is going to be under pressure from Laubish as they make their way to the Tri-Oval for their 30th time here in this event, as Jim Shedlick decides now's the time to jump onto pit road, your race leader in your Mustang category. No changes then in the battle for third position.
Yes, he had been that lead driver in the Mustangs for just about a majority of that run, meaning burning some more fuel. Benovich, while knowing he could potentially make a pass, had been really half running, maybe three-quarter throttle for a majority of the time. So keep your eye, I think, on these two, because while they have been close to each other, Sturgis for a majority of the time in front of Jones, now they're to the point where if they want, they can trade back and forth and try and help each other's race, where they can try and save each other maybe an extra lap or two to gain up on the race leader.
Yes, but what they were trying to do is try and stay with Overgaard, which they really aren't going to do, because Overgaard is on that undercut, will get fresh tyres, and will be able to push on further forward from them. So maybe they're just in their own race trying to break away from the pack that they have in front. But look at what Sodrati is going to be trying to do with Laubish, Mellor and Garcia in the Kias, because not only was Laubish closing down Sodrati's actually closing down Jocelyn and Van Katwijk, who did make the alternative strategy calls, and they both aren't as quick on the track. Jocelyn's going to be the next bottleneck, which is going to be a little bit concerning, as now all of a sudden there's a look and there's trouble, and there's Bunovic going around with contact with Diogo Melro. Melro gets wedged on Bunovic. They get themselves going again, but Diogo Melro was always looking to be aggressive in the Team Mad car, to look down to the inside, and ultimately ran out of road.
And I think you have to extend this to the exit of the bus stop, too, to show what just happened here, because things got worse with Corey Davis. First off, the first incident, you see Bunovic holding in towards the middle of the stop line to the first Kia's through, but it probably expected single file to the bus stop. Melrose, though, wanted the inside line, got too hard of an entry, sends around Bunovic. Then stick with it, because you have Davis after Bunovic comes across the racing line, and Davis runs over him, nowhere to go for him, because he doesn't know that Bunovic is spinning around in the bus stop and getting back on the racing line in the middle of the Kias. He's had no idea what was going to happen, because it's just looking like there's a car up in front. Then all of a sudden, a Mustang's there, flips him on his side, and now Corey Davis severely damaged. Bunovic was severe damage to the front and back, went back of his car. And things have completely changed in this race as we look at the rest of this replay here to see what just happened.
Corey Davis is officially out of this event. Bunovic did stay out to continue his strategy. This is effectively giving Jim Shedlick a fantastic pink slip towards a victory from Keep It Clean, but really Maxime Bunovic, a bystander for one, and at that one-line two-tool bus stop chicane, it's easy to see how he would have been flustered and frustrated at that point and not have given maybe a line for the next vehicles that were coming through there, Justin. But really, it is with a damaged vehicle and not knowing how much damage there is, you really do need to be off the racing line as much as possible, which I don't think Bunovic did in the instant with Corey Davis.
No, he didn't. He went straight to the racing line. And when that happens, that can lead to disaster. No warning of what's happening. No verbal warning of that you're coming back on the racetrack. And in turn, that's a case for disaster in any situation. We've seen it with the pit entry before with Cousin with the Kia Optimas. We just seen it there with the Mustangs. And now the Mustang in class is now wide open in terms of who can come up on top as we look at the Kias.
Very, very true. And actually look at what it's done to the MX-5s as well in this race, because all of a sudden there's Garrett Griffin, who has himself a pretty sizable margin now at the front of the field. Another couple of seconds, 3-second advantage, which you'll be trying to use as much as possible, because Allen and Carstensen have struggled over the last couple of laps or so. Look at the last times. It was a 2:14 flat on lap number 27. They were right next to each other, and that was right in the point where the traffic came in, played a huge factor, and they just got separated through the bus stop. And just like that, it's now breakaway time here for Garrett Griffin.
Yeah, chance to break in as some more Mustangs come in. In fact, a lot of the other groups are coming in for the Mustangs. But to get back to your point, as these drivers stop into their stalls and almost missed their stall.
Both of them missed their stalls. Sturgis was too short and Jones went too fast. So very, very interesting. Both of them making mistakes on the stalls. And this race suddenly, in that middle pack, which does involve Reicher and Neidhart, becomes interesting, especially when you consider that 1 lap earlier we also saw coming down in onto pit road Norbert Leitner. So Leitner all of a sudden the big advantage gainer in all of this.
Yeah, this is absolutely playing into his, I think, into his strategy now. As you see off and away Sturgis, I think he took maybe less fuel than where Jones took, because Jones lost about at least 3, 4, 5 seconds maybe on track in terms of the pit stop. 59 seconds for Jones, you see on the bottom side ticker. In terms of that for Leitner, just ended up having an extra 4 seconds gained in the lane because of the other two drivers overshooting their pit stop entry, I think. And that's going to hurt them overall on the track once again and break up that group that was working together.
It will break up that group, and crucially Leitner has got ahead of everybody in that group, so he is halfway towards chasing down a certain PJ Sturgis, who will have to stay longer for his second stop. But Emily Jones now has a different friend, and Emery now races with Inex Racing's William Levesque, the Canadian. So it seems that Emily Jones now has to try and think about this, going from one Inex driver to another to continue on the racing. Now we'll look at what that's done to the Kia field, or what has happened to the Kia field, because it's a bigger pack now. You've got Diogo Maro, of course, who's suffering with damage with Simmons, Baker, and Cornelis and Balfour. But all of a sudden, Laubish and Sadrati are all on their own as things have continued, which has meant that now they can just work on closing down Paul Jocelyn, as we look at now net leader in your Mustang category, which now once again finds its way back to Jim Shedlick.
Yeah, Jim Shedlick, even with the undercut strategy for Overgaard, was still able to gain that much amount of time overall on the track in terms of how much, again, the raw pace, being a part of that lead group, and overall really just having the best car in terms of Overgaard. He's been caught in lots of traffic, so Overgaard still, give or take, about 7-8 seconds minimum back to where the overall race leader is in Shedlick now, as you see him just coming out into the infield now. Shedlick right now midway through the infield portion of the track right now.
Yeah, midway through, and having himself a very strong run of things at the moment. But of course Maxime Vunovic just comes out of pit road right about now, as he's made his stop and has got going. And for Vunovic, and where he's come out after all of that incident, I put him behind Stefan Overgaard, but ahead of PJ Sturgis. So that's third position now for Vunovic, and probably lost a good 20 seconds from the instance that he's had. And that is a big 20 seconds that you cannot afford to lose at this track, because once you're gone, you are gone.
Yeah, that is a race podium losing situation now. And on top of that, you have the damage that's going to affect him aerodynamically. Plus, you don't know how it's going to handle in terms of how much that changes the steering, especially since some of that damage is on that back wing of that Mustang, which is going to hurt the overall speed of the car, going to hurt the turning of this car as well, with how much damage that was taken from those two different hits that have completely thrown his race out the window. At this point, he's going to need some luck, I think, to finish in the top 3 by the end of this race, in terms of how, depending on how the strategies play out and how everything else plays out, in case something else happens to the drivers around him.
That's going to be very, very telling. Look at this battle, though, going on back in the middle of the pack of Kias here, because you've got Ross Balfour at the front of the train, Baker, Cornelis, Melrose, Simmons, Kraft, and trying to stay on it is Tanner McCulloch as well. So right now, it's a bit of change, a chop and change at the front. They've got to stay with Roque Garcia if they can, who is currently 6 seconds down the road, and they are struggling to stay with him because Roque Garcia is closing down Laubish and Sadrati, and also you've got Paul Jocelyn as well being closed down. So Roque Garcia is the one putting in all the effort to close down. Ross Balfour at the moment probably doesn't have enough pace to push this train further forward than light. Here comes Simmons, though, starting to think about Diogo Melrose for another move and ultimately trying to angle it up for turn one.
And I think it's best if he gets by Melrose quickly, because after that hit into the bus stop, he has destroyed the front bumper of the car, and as you can see, easily being passed on by most of these drivers in this train going through into NASCAR, into turn number one, I should really say. That's going to absolutely kill his speed for the rest of the race, really. And for anyone behind him, it's got to be a situation where you get by as quick as you can and as cleanly as you can, so you don't lose the other 4 drivers that have gone on by in this train to have a shot to keep on working together and gain up to the rest of the drivers in Sandretti and Lobish and Garcia that are currently having to drive either in small groups or on their own at this point.
Yeah, we have seen, I believe, a pit stop potentially happen for Travis Schwenke in your MX-5s, and it's an early call to come down in at this stage and try and make that stop work, and I believe that's what happened. It was. So Schwenke now has forced the hand of everybody in the MX-5 field. He needed some damage repaired, got himself down on the lane, and he's made that stop after just over 1 hour and 10 minutes worth of racing. So if he can go an hour 50 on a tank, he is going to be sorted for the rest of this event. It's a long way to go on a tank of fuel, even an MX-5's tank of fuel, but if he has managed to save up enough, he can potentially just get there to the end. Asbury are normally kings on strategy.
Yeah, that is where a lot it can play in for sure. 46 seconds was that pit stop time for Schwenke. It's just a matter now of trying to hope that things work out. As we look at the lead for the MX-5s, those side by side, and ending up getting on by John Allen with the draft to get into going into turn one. But that for the position for second, I should really say, pardon me. But they're going to continuously try to trade the spots back and forth, knowing that's how the race trends together. But as this is going on, they've nearly gotten towards where Garrett Griffin is now on the track, where he gained some time with all the shuffling through lap traffic at one point. Now, they got that advantage to come back towards where Garrett Griffin is, and potentially might get them help with Adam Sholazi, who is lap traffic, the next driver in front of these 3.
That's going to be very, very useful, but Garrett Griffin that last time by was a second slower than his rivals, and it very much showed over the course of that last lap. Roque Garcia, though, has caught Laubish now and Sadrati, and this is where Roque Garcia now plays a very important factor against the Pure Racing team and the Team GT car that is both in front of him. The issue that he has is that he could decide to just go rocket off to the hills. I think Laubish is trying to save a little bit of fuel here in comparison to Sadrati. He's definitely got the pace to go out there and go quick, but right now he feels that it's probably better if I save fuel because Sadrati can follow me. Roque Garcia now has the decision. Do I stick or do I twist?
I think I stick, because if it was me, and he says twist instead, because he ended up seeing the driver in front taking a bad line into the bus stop. So, pardon me on that one, but overall, I think seeing the opportunity to switch spots after the mistake made by Sandretti into the entry, and now has a chance to pull off in a way and is actually starting to break the toe now.
Oh, Nicholas Laubish has had enough, and he's decided it's time to go. And I think if you're Roque Garcia, you've got to go as well. There's no other alternatives here in this situation. You have to stay with Laubish. He is so deadly as a driver when he starts hitting a rhythm, and all of a sudden, every single corner now becomes more and more vital between now and the end of this event. Nicolo Sadrati has to start thinking about this. He has to start thinking, can I hold off Roque Garcia or can I stay with Laubish? At the moment, Roque Garcia now needs to get the hurry up message.
I think he does right now too, because this is a low. You see how much Lavish is gaining now that he's not behind him, just in the infield section alone. And on top of that, it's not like he's going to be left alone. You got to remember, Paul Jocelyn is up in front of them, and they've closed the gap to within 10 car lengths of Jocelyn's back bumper. So it's not like he's just ditching and pulling off and away and has the major risk of losing the draft. Lovich has that raw pace right now to be able to take off and away from the other two drivers and potentially hook onto Jocelyn instead to work with him to try and save some fuel for the rest of this run.
Let's not forget Bob Van Katwijk has come down in and made his pit stop, so he's in along with Alex Castillo as well, both of them trying to make their second stops of the afternoon. So Bob Van Katwijk decides it's time to get this second stop done and then get a full stop towards the finish after just 1 hour and 12 minutes worth of racing, just a little bit plus. We look at Roque Garcia in the number 4 machine. Good run out to the bus stop. This is probably the best chance he's going to have because he's already dropped about a second and a half, maybe even 2 over the course of this lap. Now he's got to make the way through, tucked up underneath in the toe at about 1/10 of a second back. Now he's got to take the run off at the oval, into the tri-oval, and now get that run in towards turn number 1. There's no point in waiting at this stage, and look at the gap which has now manifested itself. It's now 1.4 seconds, 1.5 seconds even, and again decided to just sit and wait behind Sadrati instead of trying to make that move. Fuel save, and it's dangerous. 53.6 from Laubish, that's the true pace.
Yeah, and that was the fastest lap on the racetrack that time, by even faster than Jocelyn, of course. And who is currently, by the way, the race leader with the pit stop and with Van Katwijk coming in. So this is the chance now. I think Garcia is still trying to wait for that opportunity. I don't think he's close enough yet to make that pass that's in part. You can see he's trying to late break in so he can try and gain that time back up before they get back to the oval, knowing there's that situation. But it's just a matter of, can he get to him and get enough of a run to get the pass, especially now that they got Overgaard holding up. This might be exactly what he's waiting for.
I think he is, as Stefan Overgaard does become a little bit of a blockade, but ultimately does slightly lose the draft trying to navigate around. Look at that, Roque Garcia waited a long time to get back into line there with Nicolo Sadrati. Either he's trying to push that run as perfect as possible, or he's trying to do the other strategy, which is to just save the fuel. And I wonder what Roque Garcia is trying to work at on strategy in comparison to the Italian Sadrati for Team GT. Garcia out to the final corner then, or out of the chicane and into the final corner. NASCAR's 3 and 4 here at Daytona International Speedway, running that banking quite nicely as they make their way over to the stripe once again. And for Roque Garcia, it seems that there is not going to be enough of a toe unless he's going to absolutely gun it. He is. In comes Jocelyn, which hands the lead back to Laubish, and Garcia decides better of it than making the move into turn number 1. So he will be playing that sticking game for the next foreseeable future. Keep an eye though on the battle for third though in your Mustang category, because Maxim Bunovic is slowly being reeled in, it seems, by PJ Sturgios. Sturgios that time at 2:02.8 took another 0.3 of a second out.
And again, the damage coming in, again losing him time, because before that incident, I should say, in terms of time, it was a 2:01.5 you seen just a few moments ago, which was up in the top 5 for fastest overall lap times in terms of the Mustang so far today. But again, that's what happens when you have to deal with that situation. He doesn't have anyone to work with either, which doesn't help. Sturgis, of course, broken up away from Leitner at this point as well. Now, it's not going to work out as the oohs come out.
They do, because that's Garrett Griffin, I think, who's had himself a slow down penalty through the S's section before the International Horseshoe. He was incredibly greedy through the right and has to back it up, and loses not just one position but very nearly 2 as through goes one of the Mustangs. That one being Julien Rambeau, who makes the way through, does lose a position, just about stays in the draft of Niels Carstensen up front, but that could have been a lot worse there for Garrett Griffin. It's allowed John Allen though back on the train.
Yeah, I think the reason it could have been a whole lot worse is when he cut through the S's, he took all 4 tires off the racetrack. And you could have easily lost traction and maybe swung the car off into traffic or potentially caused an incident. But now it's now going to be the situation where if he can get use the tow, he can maybe get the lead on back, and this might be a situation where it might work out. But the problem is, look at how much the difference is in terms of the speeds. Alan's gaining a lot of time here in turn 2.
Oh, you know he is gaining a lot of time in that second turn. And of course that NASCAR turn, so he's just able to get that toe, use it on the outside, side by side, into the chicane, the bus stop, and just about noses it in. But both of them take a wide line, and that could be very, very deadly if they've got to serve any form of slowdown penalty. It's going to be easier for them because they can pretty much blip on the throttle if they have anything. And it looks like Carstensen is pulling away now, so that could be the break that Rennsport Online have been looking for in this event, and they have been so good when it comes to breakaways and getting those breakaways to work. And this may just be the greatest attempt of the lot, but Alan and Griffin can work together to pull Carstensen back in.
Yeah, they absolutely can, because it's going to take, again, that draft can play into a huge factor. Plus, late braking into the corners, such as like you've seen there with Alan and Griffin, can gain so much time if you have the confidence to stick the line and have to put the power down without losing grip on the corner exit if you have it set up right. And all of a sudden, what was before potential work together has just turned into Alan ready to try and chop down at the race lead.
Yes, he wants to try and chop down that race lead. He wants to make sure that he can get that race lead back. And for the moment, Niels Carstensen has to be a little bit worried about the potential behind from Alan, who has showcased on many occasions, both real and virtual, how quick he could be in an MX-5. And of course, Garrett Griffin as well, who's been a very, very solid driver over the course of this event. This could be a little bit of a turning point in this event, as could this, because again, Roque Garcia decides it's saving fuel. That is the name of the game, as they now fall 3.5 seconds back of your race leader, Nicholas Laubish, who is trying to run away for the hills. But I tell you what, Laubish wasn't the quickest on that last lap. That moniker fell to David Baker, currently 9 seconds behind Roque Garcia's group. And this is going to be quite telling, because they have a little bit of a worrying scenario, mainly because they got Alex Castillo right in the middle of that train, who is effectively 1 lap down.
Yeah, that is going to hurt that train overall as we look at that said train, because you mentioned he was one of the 2 drivers who pit with a different strategy with Van Catwick to when he pit out of the race lead. So this is going to break them up, and for Castillo, it's going to be very difficult, I think, overall for these drivers to try and manage this, because interclass traffic is not that easy to try and do, even if there's a slower pace for these said drivers. Or it's not as simple as, okay, just move on over. You got to think, he's thinking, can I maybe use this to my advantage to try and gain some time in the overall picture of things in the race.
And you have to remember, Alex Castillo, right on the back of this train is Paul Jocelyn, who is on the alternative and is effectively now exactly equal in this race. So has to push forward, can't let drivers go through, but can keep the pace, which is telling. Nice little four-car scrap, though, going on in your battles, but we have to look at Roque Garcia, because he's decided to bite the bullet. I'm losing too much time, and I've got to make that move. But look at this. Sadrati will not get the message here. Sadrati's going to stay in the tow and potentially try and make that move back. No, dives onto pit road, so Sadrati decides it's time to make the stop. Sadrati decides second stop is going to have to be now in terms of what his race is, and that's going to be a telling one. Another early stop for Nicolo Sadrati. I was going to say, look at the four-car scrap in your Mustang field between Levesque, Jones, Neidhart and Van der Velde, as Sander Van der Velde right now in the 29 finds himself on the back of a four-car train. Levesque has had no chance to play the game and run away.
And Van der Velde, I think, has been waiting for this opportunity for a while now. Remember, he got into some of those incidents in the early portions of the race, in the first 10 minutes, mind you. So this is the chance to try and get as best of a finish as he can. And at this point, I think he's got the pace. He was a tenth faster last time compared to the driver in front of Nordhart. And if he can try and continue to hook on up and use the toe, he could potentially, I think, maybe pass all 4 of these drivers the way they're going, because they're getting held up by William Levesque now, where Jones is bump drafting them down the straightaway and still losing time to the drivers, the 2 drivers behind as you followed on back with them.
Yeah, and Emily Jones there making a conscious decision to bump forward William Levesque, and that was maybe to say, I want to say fuel behind you, I know that I can be faster and go by, but would rather do the alternative. That's what she's thinking then, is Jones, as they look to try and continue on their race here in the middle of this one. We are over half the distance here at Daytona International Speedway, and
we got trouble.
We do have trouble.
Yes, and it's, speaking of top leaders, John Allen has blown up. John Allen has blown up his car, and there's been the risk at times if you over-rev the engine when downshifting, that's going to happen. He's been smoking the entire lap after leading the group. I think he blew up the car. Yes, he did, through right after the S's, that turn right after the S's, and now his race is done.
It's not, though. Yes, it is done. Yeah. He's got no fast repairs, but he's managed to get himself down onto pit road without having to take a tow, so he's gained some time. But just like that, John Allen is all sorts of trouble here in this one. So that's going to be a little bit hurtful, a little bit disappointing as we look at how this one has gone on. We've seen just how this one just fell away, and that pretty much went up like a smoke grenade, lap 37 of the event.
If we can go back just a little bit more than this, he was at the front of the group still. You know, this would be right here. You're going to see it. He is not taking the outer line, and I think potentially might have just over-revved the engine, trying to downshift, and just blew the engine. Was lucky to still make it all the way around after blowing that engine, but still, a absolute big-time mistake for Allen that will cost him this race win.
It will cost him, and it will cost him quite a bit as well, because he was right on line to try and get that one to work, and ultimately going to fall away from him. The opportunity of victory goes away from his grasp, which now means it's a 2-car scrap at the front between Carstensen and Griffin for your victory in your MX-5 category. And with arguably the favourite now out, this is open season. It's anybody's guess in the MX-5s, and we are pretty much coming up towards that MX-5 stopping distance at around 90 minutes worth of racing. If they've saved fuel well enough, though, they could be a little bit further. And what is annoying this group a little bit is Adam Shalmazi just on the rear of this one, a lap down on this group and on the same strategy. So Shalmazi just being a little bit of a nuisance a little bit in the background.
I think as long as he doesn't try and pass them, I think they'll feel he's okay. It might actually help them in terms of overall speed of the group if he stays onto the back end of him. But as long as he doesn't try and slingshot past them, especially Carstensen, and break things up, I think it won't be too much of a nuisance. It will be more so a little bit of a help, actually, more of a positive than negative.
Well, that's certainly true, but they have to be actually worried about that group behind them, because Antonin Titus, 2:11.5 on that last lap by, 2:11.7 for Calvin Furudent, and now with Griffin and co doing 2:12s, this is now starting to fall backwards into their clutches. They're having to deal with a lot of traffic here, and that, of course, is the Kia train, which holds the likes of Sadrati and Castillo and Baker and co. This is a tough race now for the MX-5s, who are desperately trying to find themselves a way to get back up to your leading pair.
Yeah, and the leading pair, speaking of that, with that traffic, Garrett Griffin nearly went all the way up into the wall, letting some of that traffic go, and that's why Carstensen's back in the lead now. So it's now to where you got to make sure you're not in the way and make sure you don't destroy somebody. There's been already a few drivers, especially the bus stop is the main worry, that have gone on the races destroyed trying to navigate the traffic. You got to know what's going on behind them and communicate with the drivers and make sure you're out of the racing line. You do not want to be eaten up by a Kia or a Mustang and sent off into the sky.
Race leader comes in. Nicholas Laubish decides it's time to bite. It's time to come down and find my box. And Laubish now understands this, as does Roque Garcia, who follows immediately afterwards. So now this becomes a very, very interesting play. Who will come out where? And this is in comparison to Jocelyn and to Sadrati, who are right next to each other out on circuit. So now for Nicolo Sadrati, he's got to wonder, where do I come into? Alex Castillo as well is manufactured into this group as where do I come out, what position? And actually, out of pit road comes Andrew Simmons and Tanner McCulloch, who pitted last time by, and big worries coming out of pit road for Julien Guerre, who will come right out in the middle of the Mustang train, in the MX-5 train.
Yep, right towards the left side of it as we look at it right now. 13th overall, or 13th in the class, I should say. But right into a position battle with Peter Belisa. And as long as they can get by quickly, I think they'll be okay. You can see the MX-5's quickly getting to the left side of the track for this side. But there's the problem of Calvin and Ferdinand, who is still in the racing line, as there looks like Belisa having some slight technical problems as he's pushed off the racing line onto the higher apex. Well, the MX-5s are actually trying to cross them over, mind you, who with the similar amount of speed, how much they're getting out of the gas, trying to make sure they don't run over that MX-5 in front. This is absolutely dangerous, I think, here, Jake.
I think Fioradent's trying to minimize as much time as possible, and he does have a right to do that as Guerre takes to the apron to try and force an opening, and there's no rule saying that you can do that or you can't do that, really, in this race. So forces out a lane, and Guerre, all of a sudden, will now have to be very, very cautious up on that high side about what's going on. Out of pit road comes Nicholas Laubish, but crucially for Laubish, I think he's got himself the gap that he wanted in comparison to other drivers, such as a certain, you're looking at Sadrati, as things go on, and it is a big gap. So I reckon that Laubish here has taken the short stop, because look at the train behind, in front of him. Levesque, Jones, Van der Velde, you've got Neidhart there as well. I think Laubish has gone for the short stop now just to get track position.
Yeah, he did. A minute 16 seconds in the pit stop in terms of the stop. Had a minute 36 as the Delta. Diego Melro now ducking into the pits. Also just a lap after majority of the drivers that were in the later half of the top 10 ducking in just a few moments ago. So a lot of drivers are starting that short pit strategy. Van Katwijk is a part of it. Laubish is a part of it. Castillo is a part of that strategy right now. All their pit stops under a minute and 21 seconds on the track. The question is, does Melro go to that strategy?
And also Garrett Griffin on the lane, your leader in the MX-5. So now all the strategies start to converse into one. Melro will be the one waiting the longest. John Allen, of course, a long time on the lane. Now in is Sven Pluter, deciding it's time for his stop. So all of a sudden on his own is Niels Carstensen, who has to hot lap his way around the track and hope that his time is going to be good. Race lead now is given to David Baker, the doctor of astrology, now at the front of this field. So he's got himself some good work, as it took about 10 seconds for Pluter to find his stall in the long and the short term. But right now, you have to say, David Baker holds all the keys to the castle, with himself now trying to get him into a good stop, slowing down. It's time for David Baker to hit the lane.
Yep, coming right on into the pits this moment here. But here's the thing, will they have enough fuel to make it? Because while the short pit has gained a lot of time, the downside is you don't have as much fuel, obviously, as you mentioned, with the fuel jugs. So that means there's the risk of, do you have enough fuel to make it to the end? And do you have to have an extra stop to make it for drivers like Laubish and Garcia and drivers like that? If they have to go one more time, that can throw any chance of the win right out the window, obviously.
I think it's all a three-stop race, so I think it's too early to tell that at the moment.
Yeah.
But I certainly think that for now, it's about how that short stop factors the long stop at the end, as Sadrati now finding himself in his own little world. He's got back ahead of Roque Garcia, though, very crucially by stopping earlier. So Roque Garcia can't get a break at the moment. He's once more stuck behind Nicolo Sadrati, but crucially made his way this lap past Paul Jocelyn, and now has the next few laps to try and work to keep pushing forward in this one with the likes of Castillo in front.
Yes, indeed, right now with Castillo up in the front, as you mentioned, it's just a chance to work again to save some fuel, stay in this line, and just be patient. But again, we've seen how the patience wears thin with some of these drivers. Knowing Sandrati has not taken the best of lines into the bus stop, has actually left the door open in some cases to the bottom lane for drivers to just zip on by. And once they get on by Sandrati, it's usually been within about a second to be able to pull away once they get by. I think Garcia might not be as patient at this time because, well, saving fuel would be a good thing. I think in the long run, the amount of time lost is not the advantage, that is not the thing you want to have, I think, overall.
Very, very true. We've had a change of position in your Mustang category, and that is PJ Sturgis getting by Maxime Bunovic for third position. Norbert Leitner is now on the back of this train as well, who will try and take fourth position back. So all that damage on Bunovic's vehicle is now starting to hurt in the long short. In comes David Baker, or in and out comes David Baker, and Ross Balfour is now in on the lane, which means once again here in this race, it's Fabrice Cornelis who goes longer than anybody else when it comes to the strategy. And I think that he is trying to go to about a minute 40, a minute 42. He may have a shot of making this one all the way to the end. It's a long shot from here to the end. If he can save that extra stop, he'll be hoping that the track maybe heats up a little bit so that he can go a bit slower in terms of laps. But in reality, Fabrice Cornelis is about 6 minutes away, 6 to 8 minutes away, so about 5 laps off of making this on the 2-stop.
If my math is right, he's been able to stretch to about a 25-26 lap run each time in the first run. If he can get again to about lap 51, lap 52, that's just in the window of estimated laps right now for the Kias, which is right now 26.2 laps according to JRT timing and scoring, as well as, of course, follow along with some timing as well. No, but in all seriousness, I think he has that strong chance to actually be able to do it. As long as he gets to about, say, lap 51, lap 52 on the run, he can, I think, maybe just have a couple laps to spare to make it to the finish.
We will see, because crossing the line, he's done 1 hour and 36 minutes on 2 tanks of fuel at the moment. What will be advantageous is the fact that in that first stop, it's naturally a little bit shorter, a little bit quicker as well, because they have to do the half a pace lap, which is added on top of it. I wonder here for Fabrice Cornelis, he's got to do probably about 2 more laps to get to about 1 hour 39, which will leave him about 44 minutes on the stop. I think he needs to leave himself 42 or 40 to guarantee himself a way home. So it's close, it's very close, mind you. It may come down to when he crosses the stripe. Right now, I think any vehicle in front of him is a massive bonus for Fabrice Cornelis.
Yeah, it absolutely is. As long as they can continue to use them as picks, continue to hold up the drivers behind, that will continue to work out in his strategy. He needs to try and hold up the other drivers behind, because the longer they have to try and get around said traffic, the more that'll help him, as long as he can get by that traffic in front of him as quick as we can. But one thing I'd like to note, Sandrati made contact on lap 47. Thank you very much to our very noteworthy viewers to note this as well, because Jocelyn was one of those drivers trying the short pit. He came out around the grouping of Sandrati. We know Sandrati is not the quickest of cars, no offense to him. You see the difference in how they take the entries, which spins Jocelyn out into a Mustang as well. Holds up as well. I believe that was in that group. Yes, indeed, that was Garcia getting held up. And now Jocelyn had to take his final stop now because of how much of a different line was being taken, how aggressive he was on the corner entry, and how, of course, you've seen there Sandrati trying to diamond into the apex, not expecting to dive it in.
Calvin Furadent and Loic Barb are on pit road at the moment as Fabrice Cornelis pulls in lap 51. I think he's a couple laps short. If if he wants to make this one all the way to the end, in my opinion. This is going to have to be a big stop and a massive fuel save from Cornelis if he wants to make it all the way to the finish. This is going to be a tough little race. Still in your MX-5 field, Niels Carstensen leads, but I put it to you now that Niels Carstensen has come down in, made his stop and got out again, and crucially ahead of Griffin Garrett as well, which is key. But look at who's now in third position in all of this. It's Travis Schwenke, and Schwenke now finds himself probably in position to close down second of Griffin and looking to get back into the lead with Carstensen. But we do note that Schwenke's fuel number is marginal at this point.
Yeah, he took the very aggressive undercut and with the early pit stop way early on, so it could just be in the window. Cornelis is still inside the pits, mind you, and losing more and more time. Lavish just passing by him with the Kias, but have to say with Schwenke, it's an absolute recovery drive for him after that incident we seen about an hour plus ago.
That's very true, and he's been working tirelessly to get back into this event. Again for Cornelis, more vehicles now trying to make their way through as the likes of PJ Sturgis and Norbert Leitner will battle it out for the final spot on the Mustang podium. Leitner down to the inside and will very, very comfortably take that position away on the brakes, as we are going to have a very quick sunset here at Daytona, of course, as the lights are starting to come down. Through will go the lights of Sander van der Velde and co, and the next little train will happen as Cornelis gets out of his box and will look to try and get back up in front. There is Andrew Simmons, and there is Dan Kraft, David Baker, Diogo Melro and co. He's got to get on this throttle PDQ if he wants to get himself into this pack nicely, and the answer is no, he's not. He is dead set in the middle, and actually for Cornelis, dead set in the middle is exactly where he wants to be, saving fuel.
Yeah, this is exactly where he needed to be. Last time, he didn't have as many cars to help save fuel with, for the most part. He was a majority for the last portion of the run, the lead car, which is why he had to pit one lap early, I think 1 or 2 laps early, I should say. So this is exactly what he needs to do. Just stay on behind, work behind them, know that these drivers will have to potentially come in for one more time, as talked about, out and go from there, and then hope that that's enough of a fuel margin saved to go all the way to the finish to try and come away with the victory with one less stop.
Well, he'll try that one, and there'll be others trying different things. Bob van Katwijk now leads your Kia category. The gap is now under 13 seconds between himself and Nicholas Laubish, who just did a 1:53.6 that last time by, compared to a 54.9. A full 1.3 seconds locked off on that last lap, and Nicholas Laubish all of a sudden finds himself in the driver's seat, and he will be in that driver's seat unless Cornelis can save the stop, because as far as I see, there's not much that can stop that driver, Nicholas Laubish, from going on to take a victory here, unless Cornelis' strategy pays off.
Yeah, he's been having the raw pace overall of the race we've talked about a little bit. Even when saving fuel, he's been pretty one of the fastest drivers on the racetrack, has made things look easy, has kept the car clean, completely clean, has not been really involved in any incidents, and just 7 total of the race, which is off tracks. He's kept it a near perfect race today for the most part, and that's what you kind of need to do in some situations where you can't afford to make mistakes. Minimize any sort of mistakes you make to have a chance to come away on the top step of the podium, and that's what he's done today.
Yeah, he has been absolutely flawless in that regard, of just making sure that everything is just micromanaged to perfection. Someone else who's been doing that well is Jim Shedlick, who has been running his own little race and has been gaining still over Stefan Overgaard, and has himself probably a stretch between 1 and 2 that he can call his own advantage at this point. So for Stefan Overgaard, he's got a lot of work to do if he's going to close that gap down. It may rely on mistakes from Jim Shedlick's part to close that down, but Shedlick is proving once again why he is one of the best drivers when it comes to these Ford Mustangs that don't often get the spotlight that they deserve.
Yeah, I agree with you that they don't usually get that spotlight. You don't usually see them use that often, if that makes sense, in a lot of the major races. But it's been good to see him be able to be as dominant as he has been really this entire run today, as it looks like Overgaard's actually going to come into the pits right now because he did do the undercut, I should say, on the last stops.
Oh, he needs to do it again, and he decides that this final stop is where he needs to put it, but he overshoots his box, and it starts looking a little bit desperate for Kiva Kinetic and Stefan Overgaard. And Overgaard all of a sudden is pretty much going to be day and done chasing down Jim Shedlick with that sort of mistake, and this is going to be a very long road back to home. He's now going to start wondering if second position is going to be safe from the likes of Leitner, Sturgis and Bunovic, who are now having to deal with this massive train being stuck with Andrew Simmons at the front of it, who from not really anywhere has shown that he's had some fantastic pace over the course of this event.
He has. He's had a quiet day really so far for the most part. And it's still very dangerous with this traffic, mind you. My goodness. As you have to say, it's been for Leitner and for Sturgios. They have not been letting them in by that quickly, because you got Bunovic too at the back of the train. I think they're thinking about here and nearly getting pushed off the racetrack, some of these drivers.
They're trying to go as quick as possible to break their opponents up, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to have their own little race, and they have every right to battle, but they know that the quicker vehicles have to find a way through. And now for someone like PJ Sturgis, it's about staying in on the line as much as possible, trying to keep with Leitner as much as possible at the moment, as we do have one Kia down in onto pit road at the moment, and that is Bob Van Katwijk from the race lead, making his final stop of the day. He will go to the end on this strategy.
Yeah, and he started on the undercut from the get-go in terms of pit stops. Every pit stop, he's just been putting 1 minute and 15 seconds of fuel, and I think now he's kept up that strategy. He hasn't been held up too much. He hasn't had any incidents. He hasn't gone off the racetrack, like some people have been held up while trying to do their strategies. Now the question is, will it work out, is going to be the main thing, because if he can get that strategy together, he's been getting a lot of time on even drivers like Lavish by doing this undercut strategy.
He has been getting the time, and he has been working hard to get that time, but ultimately he was towards the back of the pack when the first pit stop window started, so how much he's gained is going to be very much a case of, have I done enough? And I don't know he has at the moment. Your MX-5 battle for the race lead, though, this is interesting because they've all made their stops. They're all trying to get in. Schwenke last lap, 2:11.5. Griffin's last lap, 2:11.6. But they're just a tenth or two shy of Carstensen, 2:11.4. So Carstensen right now keeping the other two at bay. The top three there in this category split by under 15 seconds at the moment. I have to say at the moment, Niels Carstensen has been doing well. That gap, 5.6 seconds on the oval as things stand. I reckon that they split themselves by about 8 seconds on the road here.
Yeah, I think that's the strong potential, because none of them have anyone to work with. None of them have the draft. And once you break the toe, it's so difficult to try and catch up unless you're able to hit the lines near exactly perfect in terms of time. And so far, we've seen that between Carstensen and Griffin. On average, it's been back and forth in terms of that set time, depending on traffic. Griffin has been slowly trying to gain up, but I don't know if, I think the gap might be a bit lofty for them with 5.6 seconds. It might be that he catches and gets back in the draft within the final 10 laps of the estimated time, but that's still at least 8 laps away, where you have to hot lap your way around to try and have a shot.
That's very, very true, and you've got to get those 10s every single lap if you're closing down a gap. And this time, half a second for Garrett Griffin says he's got the pace to close that down. Travis Schwenke's 2:11.9. He probably doesn't hear on Carstensen, who's probably going to get left behind in the dust if he doesn't have to make another stop after his very early call to come down in onto the lane. This race becomes very, very good as now PJ Sturgios decides it's time for his final stop. He dives in from what was second position on track, but not likely third position on the road.
Yeah, that pit window is wide open, I think, now for the Mustangs for the rest to try and get to the finish now with 35 minutes and 41 seconds to go. Oh, and we're starting to see those mid-pack drivers come on in for their final stops. Question is it going to be enough where they're being placed off? Sturgio's has been battling, of course, in that group for a top 5 for much of this second run. Now the question is, what can he do to try and have a chance to maybe get onto the podium now with drivers like Vinovich with their damage being dealt with Leitner as well, having such a strong run in the second spot and still on the track that he was running around before the stops.
Well, crucially, Sturgis has just come out of pit road and is about 10-15 seconds behind Stefan Overgaard, just in front. So a good stop there, 26.7 on the stop, 46.1 overall on the lane time. That is pretty good, and that Workiva Kinetic Racing Mustang that is just in front is going to be one that maybe just needs to be looked at here from Sturgis as maybe I could reach this. Maybe if I push hard enough, I have the chance to go out there and make that happen. It's going to be a little bit marginal on that. It's going to have to take some big effort, but he's got to be more worried about Leitner and Bunovich's pace.
I think he definitely has to be right now at this point. It's just a matter of, is there enough of a gap, I think, because Bunovich has that damage. Shedlick is in the overall race Mustang leader, I should say, and Shedlick is now into the pits now.
Yes, he's
as you said, I believe so, and he's off and away. Let's look where Leitner is now on the track, because he's coming out of the pits now. Leitner is just entering to turn number 1. They're going to be near side by side when he comes out of the pits here.
That's not what Shedlick wants. Pushing a little bit wide, though, there was Leitner, and I think that Shedlick's just got the jump. Crucially, it's going to be the draft for Norbert Leitner and for Maxime Bunovic. So this becomes Jim Shedlick taking this one probably because he's retained the race lead with a stop in hand, but he's now got to be a little bit concerned here. Leitner and Bunovic now are going to try and use Jim Shedlick to pull themselves ahead of PJ Sturgis in this race.
Yeah, this is where they still have to come in for an air stomp, as you mentioned there. They're glad you brought that up. So this is where they're trying to race Sturgio. Sturgio's actually came out behind Overgaard once again on the track. So the problem is, it looks like they're struggling to keep up with the fresher tires now with Shedlick, in fact, because they both slid up the racetrack on the into NASCAR 1, taking the higher line, and that's not what you want to do if you want to keep up with the driver up in front of you.
That's very, very true, and those older tyres are going to be hurting more and more. And of course, Shedlick on brand new, fresh rubber will be running away from these guys, and that's going to be quite telling in the long and the short. Garrett Griffin, though, has been pulling in wonders to try and pull Carstensen back in that gap. It was a 2:11.2 that time for Garrett Griffin, 2:11.3 for Niels Carstensen. Another tenth of a second gets wiped away, and now in the middle of the fracas, taking his own little lines, he knows this Garrett Griffin, I can't afford to let vehicles by the way that they want to. I've got to do it the way that I want to, and that's how he's been racing, and that's how good that he has been. That gap is doing well, and I think that this race is about Garrett Griffin pushing for the long term.
Yeah, I think so right now as well, because you mentioned having, of course, someone with professional experience like John Allen in this race, and those MX-5 class drivers I think you're referring to now with Garrett Griffin. There is the risk, it looks like, with John Allen, who of course blew that engine when up in the race lead, mind you, who's now watching this all go on, as Carstensen might not have enough fuel and nearly just turned one of the Kia Optimas just now, just a moment ago after getting into contact with Daniel Kraft. So the risk is now for Carstensen, does he have enough fuel? Let's go to the replay, because this just happened here with Kraft, where he nearly turned one of the Kias as the Kias tried to manage through the traffic.
Dan Kraft was very, very apt with his save. He did fantastic to keep the vehicle pointing straight, but you have to remember that drivers like Carstensen pitted over the halfway mark, as did Garrett Griffin. This becomes a very important race of, can you make it to the end? on a tank of fuel. A lot of races in endurance come down to can you make it on a tank of fuel. I reckon RSO are good. I reckon Garrett Griffin's good. I reckon Travis Schwenke is the one that fans should be worrying about more rather than Carstensen and Griffin. I think it's a straight up drag race between these two. It will be marginal. We will see it around 2 hours 23 minutes to see who's going to be close. But for the moment, keep an eye on the train right now with Castillo, Cedrati and Roque Garcia. They are currently 45 seconds behind Nicholas Laubish, and Laubish has to do a long stop to finish this event.
Yeah, he absolutely does. He did that short stint in terms of fuel with a minute 16, so if he has to, it would be a very short pit stop. They have to have enough fuel to make it for under 17 laps around this track estimated, not including the distance you have to go around with the white flag. So these drivers are the ones that are going to have some of that advantage with being able to save fuel and taking or a full tank of fuel with the full minute and 51 seconds in the stalls. That's going to be the question. Is it going to be enough of a gap that he has to be able to come away with the race win? That's the question for him, I think, by far tonight.
He was looking to say, I may go onto the lane. He may have just got a call to say, I'm staying out. So that's going to be quite telling in the long term for Nicholas Laubish, who is pushing actually quite hard on this stint, doing another quick lap of 54.1 though, that time by. So really is showing that he is here to race and have a very strong pace at the rate that he's going to race. Schwenke as well, keep an eye on him too, because look at the differences in times. Carstensen with the tap that he had, 2:13.3. It was a 2:12.2 from Garrett Griffin. It was a 2:11 flat from Travis Schwenke. We have an MX-5 race.
Yes, we indeed do, and it's closing up as to be expected now. Second and third, 3.4 seconds now, with Schwenke's full raw pace coming in with the traffic management. A set 1.1 seconds gain last time. Question is, can he gain some more time this time is the question. And because you look at the bus stop, this is where the best of drivers gain some time in these technical corners. This time, gaining 2/10, make it 4/10 from the exit of the bus stop and the run out of the bus stop. From Schwenke's experience compared to how Griffin takes the corners, that's that kind of a difference that can make these two close on up. And you got to remember, Carstensen still in front of right now. Griffin currently up about 25 car lengths through the tri-oval.
2:11.3 that time from Niels Carstensen, 2:11.7 from Griffin, drops 4/10. Travis Schwenke 2:11.5. So Carstensen finds himself the fastest lap that last time by. Let's go on board with Travis Schwenke in the number 3 machine, because the Asbury Motorsports team are trying to close in late. This is Roadspot TV Fan Immersion. In comes Nicholas Laubish. The big pit is now, and where he comes out in comparison becomes massive. He needs 55 seconds over Fabrice Cornelis to be safe, as Cornelis makes his way through 3 and 4, because Cornelis is trying to go one stop longer. It's a long stop for Laubish. He did his short stop earlier, but he probably has a minute 15 that he wants to do to get himself to the end. He is 23 or 25 minutes away from a victory if, and that's only if, he can make this stop pay. Alex Castillo has come out of pit road after making his stop. So Laubish, a long, long wait when it comes to pit road. And all of a sudden, there goes by Fabrice Cornelis to get ahead on the road. Of course, haven't made his stop, but Laubish now has himself a bit of a gap. Bob van Katwijk, for example, is making his way through 3 and 4, or sorry, 1 and 2, trying to make his advantage pay, but out and away goes Laubish to finish his stop, and he's got clean air to do one thing and one thing only. That's attack. Justin, this now comes down to a race of can the stop be made perfectly by everybody, and can Fabrice Cornelis make his way to the end without needing to stop once more?
I think when it comes to the pit stops, as long as you make sure you kind of signal in terms of how you run the line that you're going to come in, I think most drivers will be okay. As long as you don't pull an over-aggressive move, you'll be in this situation. On the when it comes to the second question, though, with Cornelis, it's going to come down to, has he gotten enough opportune time to save fuel behind Melrose in the traffic compared to, say, some of the other drivers, because he is in the catbird seat to try and come into the race victory in this one. If the strategy has worked, that is going to be the main question, as some of the last Mustangs complete their pit stops at this moment too.
Oh, I'll tell you something, this MX-5 battle is very interesting, because Travis Schwenke has just put in the fastest lap probably of his event today, 2:10.770, and he takes another 9/10 out of Garrett Griffin, brings the gap within 2 seconds as Cones goes flying about in towards the West Horseshoe. Niels Carstensen only a 2:11.2 that last time by. Griffin's falling back into Schwenke, and Schwenke is catching the pair up. And I wonder here, does Garrett Griffin fall back into Schwenke and work together with Schwenke to pull in Carstensen?
I think that's the I think they have to do that to have a chance to keep up, to catch up, because having that draft of the 2 drivers is better than having the draft just running. Really, I should say, running on your own. But the thing is, Schwenke, that fastest lap you were talking about is the fastest of the entire class of the entire day so far, Jake.
That just tells you how quick they have been running. The likes of Garrett Griffin's fastest time was a 2:10.782. Niels Carstensen, just for example, actually did go slightly quicker, 2:10.672. His fastest lap of the day, but that is so quick from Travis Schwenke, and it comes right when it matters. Roque Garcia now is your leader of the event with Nicolo Sadrati. In fact, Sadrati has made his way back through. They are trading positions now, trying to work together to get to the end. These Kia battles are very important, because just 9 seconds down the road is Andrew Simmons' massive train with Cornelis involved. Got to keep an eye on this as Maxim Bunovic comes down in onto the lane and makes his final stop of the day. Leitner has already come in, as has the likes of Overgaard, and actually look at where Leitner is compared to Overgaard. It is very, very close out on track. Just a couple of seconds in the battle for next second on the road. Bunovic needs a good stop and is already out and away.
Yeah, it looks like he massively tried to save some fuel on that run and took one of his fastest pit stops, I think, of the entire day, in terms of the entire class, I should say. Yeah, 15-second pit stop, the fastest by far of the day. It puts him right in the middle of the battle.
He does, and he's just behind Overgaard, so his second position is still on. Bunovic, Leitner, and of course Stefan Overgaard there. PJ Sturgios, the big loser in all of this, who is off the back of the train. Right now, you have to say, second position. The podium is not decided, apart from Shedlick at the moment here in your Mustangs.
Yeah, I don't think it is yet, because that massive underfuel of the car and saved at least 20 seconds in terms of the pit stop time, give or take. So that 10 seconds, I should say, so that amount of time on the track will help them. As look at these Kias, I think now it's the point where Garcia, it's that point of the run where he says, okay, I've saved enough fuel with you, please let me go.
Oh, it is a please let me go, and I think he's going to have to try and make something happen here. Got a bit of traffic in front. That's Peter Balassa just in front in the Mustang, and oh, there's a bit of miscommunication. They have to go to the inside. Balassa went high after angling down low. Look to the inside, not quite there at the moment. That's going to check up then Cedrati, who misses the apex on entry, and surely this is the time Roque Garcia decides, I've got to get through. Cornelius' strategy is practically here at the moment, trying to go for this, but he is dropping back from Diogo Maro and may lose his drafting buddy for the foreseeable future. He can't afford that one, but here comes Roque Garcia high side, trying to make it happen because Cedrati is coming in to make his final stop.
And now this is where Garcia is saving the fuel. Can he get that extra lap or two to try and get himself to the finish here? Here's Cedrati. I think the base, and depending on how much time he's in the pits here, might place him back in that mix of the battle once again, once everyone else comes on in, because that battle is being broken up by a mixture of the Mustangs now. If we can go to where Daniel Kraft is, they're starting to nearly run over that position bound we talked about.
Oh, this isn't helpful at all, and Daniel Kraft knows that they're running over that battle. They'll be running over another one because Schwenke has officially caught Garrett Griffin with a 2:10.3 that last time by. What a lap from Schwenke. Griffin himself a 2:10.6, and now Carstensen is under threat now from being caught up in the MX-5s. All three classes have great battles for the podium as Cornelis goes straight on at the West Horseshoe on entry, and that one may have just cost him a little bit of time in slowdown. It's starting to really look good, as now we've got Niels Senkowski, who's going to join us, who is strategizing at the moment for Fabrice Cornelis. Niels, this becomes very, very important because we've got to ask the question, can he go and save a stop?
Yeah, that's what we tried the whole race, and I think we're on a good way to do it right now. He's even found a train to do the last part, or the first part of his last stint in, so I think we're good on fuel and can make this on 2 stops.
Well, you can make it on 2 stops, but the next question comes, can you hold off Nicholas Laubish, who will be pushing like a man possessed with 53.7s to get yourself over to the end when you're running a second a lap slower?
Well, so far he's not catching up enough, and if Fabrice can keep his tires in check, the good thing is he didn't have to push at all with the draft now in the train. So I think he's got tires until the end, and I think Nicholas would need to catch up by like 2 seconds a lap near the end, and I don't think that's going to happen, so it looks good so far.
Well, we wish you the best of luck there. That is Niels Senkowski, who's joined us strategizing for Fabrice Cornelis, who could be on the way to a victory if what we hear is to be believed at this stage, and it very much likely is right now. Focused battle for second right now in your MX-5 category. It's Garrett Griffin versus a certain Travis Schwenke. A little bit wide there on that last lap, and Griffin lost another little chunk of time. I think Carstensen's been closed down. I think Schwenke's got to go and got to make this happen. If he's not going to be able to get this working, then it's going to be difficult. But now the traffic is not getting much help from Garrett Griffin here, because Griffin takes that inside line. That costs Schwenke a bit of time then, as Bunovic, also Leitner and also Overgaard make their way through. Right now, I have to say here, Justin, Travis Schwenke is now starting to worry about the traffic coming through and how Garrett Griffin is actually managing all of it.
Yeah, those Mustangs not going to be happy with how he took some of that management there, but I think the thought process was, if I can use the traffic as a pick and break Schwenke off the racing line while I stick on it, that will hold him up and potentially take away the opportunity, because now, what was a massive rally to keep on up, it's going to probably take at least another lap or two to even set up a pass, and that, in turn, could end up costing him the chance to try and make the set pass for second. They still got to think about Carstensen as well, who again still has that risk of making it for the rest of the way after trying to save as much as he could on the first run. So I think right now they're acting as though this could be the possible virtual P1 if that becomes the case.
In comes Roque Garcia for a stop, as does Dennis Neidhart in the Mustang category. So through will go Nicholas Laubish to pick up another position. The gap between Laubish and Cornelis is now a firm 15 seconds out on the road. Cornelis 53.7 that last time by, 53.1 from Nicholas Laubish. Gained 0.6 of a second, but that's not enough at this stage to get it through over to the line, because he's only got 8 or 9 laps to go in this event, and that's the telling point. 8 or 9 laps to get it home. That's effectively 2 seconds a lap that has, or 1.5 seconds a lap that has to be caught. That's not the pace that's being done. Cornelis currently, I would say, is safe as Paul Jocelyn gets one down the inside of Tanner McCulloch, not for position, but a very, very interesting little development there.
A very interesting development in terms of the strategies in this. I think he's in the driver's seat. I agree. I think he is in that driver's seat. While he had underfueled the car, and usually you can gain some time from that, I think it's too much. I agree with the strategies. I think it might be too much at this point, the way the position on the track. It's going to take a miracle, I think, to be able to catch up to the pace with the amount of time they have left.
There's only one driver who's probably due a stop in your Mustang category, and she is in second position right now. It's Emily Jones. Emery is due to come down on the lane, pitted on lap 32. Either this lap or the next, probably going to make her way onto pit road. And what it has been telling is that she has run her own race, and she has run a very, very solid race to that as well. Probably going to come out around Sander van der Velde and PJ Sturgis, which top 6, that's not bad at all.
Not bad at all, especially for the drive she's had. Been mixing up with battles, been mixing up strategies, but look at this battle. Daniel Kraft going right on by Melrose on the inside. So these drivers know that these drivers can mostly make it the way here. They do not need to worry about saving. They can battle as much as they want, as long as they don't cook the tires too much while doing so.
Well, the question is, who can go that long distance? Because Baker came in, Kraft came in, Melrose came in. Cornelis was the one who stayed out the most of anybody else. All of these drivers now starting to squabble amongst themselves. If Cornelis gets caught up in all of this, this is going to be a really, really big worry. Because Cornelis, the last thing he wants is contact, is damage, is a spin, is anything. He wants 8 clean laps to get to the end, and I'm not sure he'll get them in this train.
I think as long as they don't lose their heads or anything like that, I think he'll be okay. You can see, starting to see, I think, some of that, and lost a bit of ground here going through NASCAR 1 and 2. But I think that's in part because he's not sure what they're going to end up doing if they get over to aggressive. He wants to have that cushion to be able to have enough reaction time to make sure he doesn't run over somebody or gets any contact. If you're on the back bumper of somebody while this is going on, that is where you lose your time.
Very true.
And get that damage.
Very true, and there's been a change for second position in MX5. Schwenke's gone on this lap. It was a slow lap as well for Garrett Griffin. 2:12.2. He couldn't do anything about a 2:10.3 from Travis Schwenke, who breezed on by, and now is looking at Niels Carstensen on a 2:11.2. Took a second out that last time by. This becomes Schwenke versus Carstensen for the Mazda victory.
And you know what? It was a slowdown penalty, actually, too, when it came to Griffin out of the bus stop that caused that situation, too, where he went in the grass. So now, Schwenke just has to hope he can keep on up. They're separated by right now just from the distance of about half the back straightaway. All they need is basically for Carstensen to keep on getting held up with traffic, letting them on go, try and use their draft a little bit from behind, get that together. And I think he might be able to catch him with maybe about 4 minutes to go.
Dan Kraft can't go any further. He has to dive down onto pit road, side by side for second. Norbert Leitner versus Maxime Bunovic in your Mustangs now. On the brakes, left-hander of two, trying to make it work. Overgaard there in fourth position, and traffic behind that they've negotiated over the past half a lap. So Bunovic now back into second position, but how much will he have to worry? Leitner is back there. Overgaard is now in this one, and probably trying to wait for the right time to strike.
Yes, he is right now, because he lost some time from going into the grass, mind you, on the S's you've seen on the side of the camera a couple laps ago. They are way behind where Shedlick has been in terms of the overall pace. But this could go either way, because you got Bunovic with damage, you got Leitner, who's been a very fast driver in the late parts of runs, and you got Overgaard that's been trying a lot of the undercuts of this race today. That can mix things up. Though, of course, the driver at the back of that train is lap traffic, we should note, in Balassa in terms of the interclass traffic.
That's very, very true. Baker, Melrose, Cornelis, and Ross Balfour starting to drop back a little bit. Who dives onto lane one does. David Baker now gives way with less than 10 minutes to go here at Daytona. The sun setting, and this is going to be important. 10 minutes and under, probably about 7 laps remaining here in this event. And now Diogo Melrose holds the lead, Cornelis second, Balfour in third, each of them trying to get as far as possible on their tanks, but at the moment it seems it's just that little step too far. 16 seconds the gap between Cornelis and Laubish I think is too far back to make anything happen. Definitely the quickest on the 3-stop strategy, but is that enough at this stage as Leitner battles Bunovic now, Overgaard fading. Oh, it's contact! Bang! That's Paul Jocelyn who's gone up and over. That was with around Overgaard, was trying to deal with the traffic, and that was with a certain Peter Balassa, who was right behind Overgaard, and a huge crunch into the safer barrier goes Paul Jocelyn.
And I think that was basically bad lines being taken by some of those lap cars going on. That's a lap down MX-5 and a lap down Mustang. That forced him to try and really thread the middle, but that isn't enough really space out of this kind of a racetrack. Problem is, at the same time, it looks like trying to come down with the Mustang and Balassa and turn them hard left. Nothing you can really do in terms of that, and you're thinking, if you are that driver, the blue machine up in front of all this in Garcia, you're thinking, thank goodness that this happened I was able to avoid this as the flipping car was on the apron.
Yeah, very, very true. Let's look at the MX-5s, because Carstensen has found a good 9/10 of a second all of a sudden. He's now found himself a safer buffer with 10 minutes remaining, and I think Carstensen is probably safe unless traffic decides it wants to play a fickle hand in the end of this proceeding. Now in comes Diogo Melrose to make his stop. He can't do it. It's now Cornelis versus Balfour for the race victory, and I wonder how Ross Balfour can go on his tank, because Cornelis has the lead. He's now got no drafting partner. He's now got to hope that his last 3 laps or so are good, because Balfour will not want to make an overtake knowing Cornelis' strategy.
Yeah, and Balfour too, you got to remember, he pit on lap 49 was the pit stop time for lap for him. That was about 2 laps earlier than what Cornelis did. So if he was to try and make it, it would be an absolute miracle for Balfour at this point to try and match up, as now it looks like their lights are turning on as the sun turns to dusk.
They are turning their lights on, and now all of a sudden Ross Balfour is thinking, I could get Fabrice Cornelis here if I'm just clever. He's been spending the entirety of this last stint stuck behind Cornelis, and even now he decides to save fuel, and there is not much time remaining left in this race. So now this becomes the question, with 3 laps to go when they cross the stripe. What will Ross Balfour decide that he wants to do? And he angles his way down to the inside, and Cornelis lets him to try and save a little bit more fuel, and it was a huge lift and coast there from Cornelis, trying to give himself a bit of a gap. I wonder now if Balfour can make it to the end, if there's no risk at all, and Cornelis is potentially safe, home and dry with 15.5 seconds back to Laubish.
I'm really not sure if Belfour can make it right now in terms of the strategy. I think Cornelis is in that window. Belfour is just outside of it. We have seen drivers be able to stretch it a bit longer, an extra 3 laps than most of our drivers for one of the pit stops. It's going to be absolutely close if Belfour has enough fuel to make it to the end. I don't know if he can do so.
Oh, this is going to be so tight between them at the moment. And Schwenke's lost second position back to Garrett Griffin, which effectively means Carstensen can now run away for the hills as he has been for the last few laps and has done very well. Just about negotiates Alex Castillo as traffic. The battle for second, third and fourth is still on though in your Mustangs, and Bunovic pushes maybe a little bit wide. This could be the chance that Leitner's been looking for to get around the outside, and it will be the chance that Leitner's been looking for, trying to use the side draft to advantage on that high side, that line which will be rubbing in more and more as this race goes on. Tanner McCulloch will now try and get past all of them in terms of the traffic, breezing on by 3 wide on the front stretch, but now Leitner's starting to think it's my time to get to the front of this field and try and get a second position away in the battle for the podium.
I think he can do so. It's just a matter, can he outbreak him into one? My goodness, Bunovic really overcooked it. A huge mistake, and now Overgaard's going to move into the spot.
And that's what Overgaard was waiting for, the one mistake, too late on the brakes. There was a certain Maxime Bunovic, and Bunovic now all of a sudden finds himself back in third place, and Leitner having to deal with the traffic at Cedrati just to keep this one going. Keep an eye out though on Cornelis and Balfour. Cornelis just playing that waiting game on Core Sim Racing Scotsman. Ross Balfour, a lot of experience when it's come to these sorts of vehicles. Moved away from it in the last couple of years, but I wonder if they'll have to go a lap further. Their lap times, I think, are a little bit too quick to go through. Watch the clock as they cross the line. 2:19.58. There is more time. It is a 3 lap to go to the end. It's another lap that Ross Balfour's going to have to do, and Cornelis will have to do as well. And they're gaining time on Laubish. I think the pair of them are safe to the end right now here, Justin, and they are scrapping this out, going, come on, I want you to run out of fuel next.
Yeah, they're trying to push each other to try and run out, and now they got to deal with the battle for second for the MX-5s in terms of lap traffic to go on quickly. Now Schwenke's trying to pull the same thing that was done a few laps ago by Griffin to try and dice the lap traffic around to make them take a different line. That's going to hurt a little bit Cornelis. This could go either way now. The question is, will Cornelis be able to make the pass if he can get back on by Belfour? Or a much closer finish compared to last night's race, you have to say, to the Friday night race for the Roar before the 24.
Oh, you have to agree with that much. And the next traffic is Niels Carstensen, your race leader in your MX-5s. Balfour versus Cornelis. Cornelis just playing the waiting game, saving that last little morsel of fuel to make sure to get to the end, trying to run Balfour dry towards the end as they make their way through on the back stretch. And you can see again a huge lift and coast from Fabrice Cornelis, trying to save fuel on the brakes. A lot more different from Ross Balfour, who has the experience of running these vehicles, but you can see again, good pickup off the exit there for Cornelis. And I wonder if they'll start playing chicken. They'll start wondering, no, you go first. No, I want to be second on the final lap. 2 to go then at the stripe, and the battle still rages on in Mustangs as well for the podium. Leitner and Bunovic now fighting for third. Overgaard's got a bit of a gap.
And Balfour is he can't make it. He's ducking straight to the pit.
And that is the most telling sight of all. Ross Balfour has to depart 2 laps short, 3 minutes short. And now Fabrice Cornelis has just got to run the tank perfectly to get over to the end of this event. If he can't, it's Nicholas Laubish's. Otherwise, Cornelis has got a rubber stamp that gets him a seal of approval for victory.
I had the feeling that Belfour was not in that picture to make it to the end, and I think it sealed it when they had the 3 laps even to go when that's crossing the stripe the second last time around. Now, it's Cornelis' race to lose. As long as he doesn't run out of fuel or can coast his way to the finish, he might be able to come away with the victory after finishing second yesterday by 16 seconds. this is his chance to win the Roar before the 24 here.
Oh, you bet it is. Look at Leitner, though, trying to attack Maxime Bunovic. This for third place, and now Bunovic will start be worrying about that damage, and now you start thinking, just sits on the rear, trying to bump draft away forward, wanting second position to be the next place that's gone. I think Overgaard's not safe. Look at Leitner push Bunovic back into play, and now all of a sudden this race gets interesting for your Mustangs, because Bunovic now may have a shot at second place. Will he go late on the brakes? No, he can't. But is there a lock-up there from Overgaard who runs wide? Yes, there is. And now, Justin, they're scrapping it out for second once more.
And look at the time of the clock as well, 25 seconds to work with. This could be potentially their second last to last lap right here. So they need to time this out to where it's the perfect shot. Either get your bump draft each other for the pass or make the move to enter the tri-oval.
Do or die now for Fabrice Cornelis. This is the white flag lap of this event. It's 2 laps to go in the battle for second. You've got Jim Shedlick leading category in your Mustangs and in your MX-5s. It's Niels Carstensen who does have the advantage over Griffin and Schwenke, who are scrapping it out for second position for Cornelis. It has been a fantastic race, which for the moment has looked great. We'll focus briefly on what's happening between Overgaard, Bunovic and Norbert Leitner. Leitner is now up into third position now, pushing to try and get past Stefan Overgaard in the scrap for second. And right now, there's not much you can say. Laubish right now, have a look at him. He's dropped a lot of time over that last lap, and he's back in the clutches of Balfour for second position. But now it's a waiting game here in this one, because you wait to see the likes of Fabrice Cornelis make their way through the next section. Down to the inside goes Leitner and takes the position away from Overgaard, but Overgaard can get the run back through this section of track on the run to the line. So now you feel that Bunovic is just playing coy, waiting for that magic moment to strike. Nobody wants second heading to the final section. Fabrice Cornelis, though, keep an eye out on him as he will make his way towards the bus stop. He's got the advantage. He's played the strategy card absolutely perfectly here this evening, and this for Cornelis will probably be one of his proudest victories of the lot in the manner of which he's done it. 3 and 4 left to go, and already pulling the weave on and showcasing to the world what he is capable of doing, because around William Levet he will go. It is going to be Fabrice Cornelis who will make his way to the tri-oval and will pick up victory here at Daytona in the Roar before the 24 in absolutely impervious fashion. And the next vehicles now will be trying to make their ways to the line. Jim Shedlick will be next here, as he has had another faultless Roar, and he will get himself a Mustang victory one more time here at Daytona, and it has been a pretty dominant display by him. But firstly, Niels Carstensen making his way around 3 and 4, holding off Griffin and Schwenke right now is going to run out of road to chase this one down, because Niels Carstensen is going to go at 200 kilometers an hour to take victory just as Laubish runs out of fuel over to the line. Carstensen takes victory in MX-5s, and it's going to be just about Jim Shedlick who will take it in your Mustangs. Now to Overgaard, Leitner and Bunovic. We will look as they drag to the line, and that, I believe, is going to be very soon Leitner worrying. Overgaard, I think, is running out of time, running out of patience here, and he's not going to try and get himself the chance of victory unless he has an absolutely flawless run out of the exit. It's okay. Bunovic has the damage, remember. This is going to hurt him in his long run to try and get over to the end. Is there safety for Norbert Leitner in second position? That gap is closing 10th by 10th. Millimetre by millimetre. They come off of the oval and now start pushing. Look at this. There's traffic in the way as well. Now which way do you go? Goes high side as they drive for the line. What can you do over the line? It's stolen by Overgaard just on the stripe. And that was a titanic scrap for the podium between them. Great racing, Justin, by all.
Absolutely great racing. Still more drivers trying to get to the finish. Emily Jones having a good run overall as well, and holding on Van der Velde, who is trying to have the recovery drive. A very competitive race that came down to strategy in the end. For some, the strategies were put into a wrench by the extra lap. But for Cornelis, hitting the strategy the perfect way. For Shedluck, along with Carstensen, having the raw pace to take the checker flags today for the respective classes.
Well, let's keep an eye out on everything that's happened. The results then will go up on your screen. This is how things finish here at Daytona. Fabrice Cornelis then picks up victory in 2 hours, 25 minutes and 42 seconds, beating out Ross Balfour by a pit stop, 31 seconds in the end. David Baker gets third ahead of Roque Garcia in fourth. Diogo Mero is fifth, with Nicholas Laubish running out of fuel on the final lap, dropping from second to sixth. Daniel Kraft gets seventh position with Nicolo Serdrati in eighth, who was leading for the majority of this event. Bob van Katwijk in ninth. He was the one on an alternative strategy with Andrew Simmons in 10th, Alex Castillo, Julian Rambo, and also Tanner McCulloch, your top 13 in your Kia category. When it comes to the second division, your likes of your Mustangs, it was Jim Shedlick who walks away from the rest of the field, thanks in part to an incident with the Kias, and Maxime Bunovic. It's Stefan Overgaard who pips Leitner at the line for second position. Leitner in third. Bunovic, though, had the chance for second, but it would only be fourth in the end. PJ Sturgis gets fifth ahead of Emily Jo, and she holds off Sander van der Velde in seventh place, with Dennis Neidhart rounding out the top eight, with Levesque, Reichert, Gued and Guerre rounding out that division. MX5's Niels Carstensen takes the victory for Rennsport Online, with Garrett Griffin second and Travis Schwenke recovering from damage to get third place. Calvin Furident is fourth, with David Hampson fifth and Antonin Titus in sixth position. Loic Barb is seventh, with Sven Pluter in eighth. Adam Shalmazi gets ninth, and then those who failed to finish today, the likes of Balassa, Jocelyn, John Allen, a big loser in all of this. Corey Davis and Antoine Cousin also losers. Jeff Jacobs, likes of Dries Nice, Tony Repisard, James Saunders and Aurelian Gimmelwitz do not get themselves over to the end of this event. We're going to step aside, though, here on the iRacing Esports Network, because the post-race show is coming to you after this, from this, the Raw, before the 24.
Alfala is $10,500 richer, two-time NASCAR. Is your 2013 NASCAR iRacing done? It's going to be Humvee winning the race, and it's going to be Conti taking away his first NASCAR 2017 NASCAR Peak Antifreeze Series Championship to Ryan Luza. Alfala is a four-time champion of the NASCAR Peak Antifreeze iRacing Series.
Said it couldn't be done. Here, Optimus, 2 hours, 24 minutes and 2 tanks of fuel. You're laughing, aren't you? That's impossible. But no, one man did make it possible, as it was victory in Kias for Fabrice Cornelis. It was a runaway victory at the end for Jim Shedlick. Got a lot of help, though, to get there. because he was pushed in the early stages by the likes of Bunovic, Overgaard and Leitner. And in your MX-5s, Niels Carstensen holds off the battling Garrett Griffin and Travis Schwenke in a case of Scorpion versus the Fox, as the pair couldn't stop fighting against each other. Carstensen manages to hold off victory there. We're in the post-race show here on the iRacing Esports Network, brought to you by RaceSpot TV. Jake Sperry and Justin Prince here in the commentary booth, and joining us right now, your race winner here overall, Fabrice Cornelis. Fabrice, the audacity to go for a two-stop strategy here today on what looked on paper to be a three-stop race. How proud do you have to feel about that?
Yeah, I think mostly I have to thank Niels for that, for doing that amazing call for going for that two-stop. Because before the race, I think nobody thought it was possible to do two-stop. But the first stint, I was in a pack and I could save so much fuel. I could make 25 laps, and then Niels suddenly said, if we keep doing this every stint, we can make it with two stops. And yeah, it just happened, and yeah, I'm very happy. It was an amazing call of him again.
Well, a great call. It gets you a victory. It gets you one of the first victories in terms of iRacing special events. And to set the stage out for Pure Racing Team, to get them up on a pedestal, which you have been hoping to get for a very long time, that you've been looking to try and set off Pure season off with a victory, knowing that you put the groundwork in place to get this victory, how is things going to look now towards 1 week's time for Pure Racing Team?
I think, we have to start preparing now. Some guys already did preparation, but I have to prepare for this race, and also very busy with driving school and university and all that stuff. So, but I mean, I will start practicing from tomorrow, and yeah, we're just gonna try to do the same like we always do, and try to go for race wins this season.
Well, race win seems to be the aim of the game, but you have yourself a big victory here at Daytona. Before we let you go, any shout-outs or sponsors you'd like to give?
Yeah, first of all, huge shout out to Niels again. Amazing work on the crew chief. Amazing call again. And then the normal ones, Pure Racing Team for all the support. Our Pure Driving School, Astro Racing, Spuju and Hato as well. And of course you guys for broadcasting.
No worries at all. Fabrice Cornelis gets a big victory here at Daytona Beach. But Justin, final thoughts then as we call an end to the Raw before the 24.
It was, again, a competitive race today with a lot of different strategies coming to play. We've seen the aggression in the early portions of the race and what went from there. We've seen what happened when over-aggression gets too aggressive and the damage it can cause. But overall, you see the best drivers are the ones who were the ones who made the least mistakes, kept the aggression to a minimum or kept it to the right spots, or were able to play the strategy cards the right way to save enough fuel to finish off on one less pit stop to take the checker flag today. We've seen everything for the Roar before the 24, which makes things very interesting for the 24 hours next week.
It certainly does, and remember, you can catch that one on the iRacing Esports Network, presented by RaceSpot TV, the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona, the first 24-hour race of 4 here this year, and it's going to be a huge event. You are going to want to check that out in all of your capacity. Make sure that you check that out. Also, if you haven't already, we've seen the racing finished in the Porsche Pro qualifying. If you haven't had a chance to check that out, see if that race continues to be a bunch of fun. Will Beneke get another? Will the likes of Jared Filsell start pushing through? Or will someone else find themselves with a victory? You can only find out if you watch that. And of course, we are not completely done here today on the iRacing Esports Network, because over the next 2 days we will have events like the Club Sports Series powered by DGFX. That will be coming to you from Daytona in a few hours time, in under 2 hours. And of course tomorrow, the 6 hours of Suzuka in the Neo Endurance Series. Join Connery Maddock, Cameron Walsh and Tobias Brockman for that one. But from here at the Raw before the 24, that's been Justin Prince, Hugo Louise on cameras, and of course those that we have to thank: Andwern Designs, the official graphics partners here at RaceSpot TV, ATVO and Apgeneer, the official graphics engine, live timing and scoring by Nick Disson, animations by Simon Grossman, and of course Istvan's Ballows Track Cams 22. Check them out. I've been Jake Sperry, Cornelis, Shedlick, and Carstensons write their name in iRacing folklore with victory here this afternoon, and now they will have targets on their backs for the rest of the 2019 season. Good night.